Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sports Ballers podcast. I'm Evan Ash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. How are y'all doing today?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah, can't complain.
Okay. Well, I
Could,
had,
but who would be listening?
Our one listener might be listening. I had heard that when you do any type of show or talk or anything, you should start with the most important thing, which is, of course, Georgia Tech football wins again.
What?
Yeah, again. That is 2 wins in a row. This time 23-20 in overtime versus Duke. We were up by 14 with like 5 minutes left or something, and stunk to join up in that little bit of time.
What's going on with Duke this year, by the way? Because they've actually had a pretty decent football program for the past 5 years or so, at least.
They have?
Yeah, they played against one of the Jameis Winston teams in the ACC championship.
And yeah, they got boat raced.
Yeah, they got boat raced.
Sure, but like they were, the best team in that division for quite some time.
That's
not saying
not
much.
A big bar, but but to be fair, they were there, and I do believe
they certainly
played,
were not losing to Georgia Tech.
Well,
they
not
might have.
This version of Georgia Tech. That version of Georgia Tech was actually pretty good. Because I think Duke that year played Texas A&M in a bowl game before Johnny Manziel rolled out to go to the NFL and have his ill-fated career there. So that was actually a really good game, though. I was watching that at an Italian restaurant in the waning days of, I believe, was that 2014. So yeah, that was a good game. That was a really good bowl game. But Duke's had some level of success recently. I thought they kind of dipped, after that. But yeah, you're right, Evan. It would be 13 because then Manziel went pro in 14. So yeah, I figured the Duke was kind of back up, but not great, obviously. The ACC in general is cheeks. And, Clemson's the only team that you think would have a shot at being relevant in the playoff mix. And even they're kind of meh because DJ Uiagalelei is not as good as advertised. Literally, he's in advertisements. But, I think that, credit to Georgia Tech for getting her done. I mean, what are you guys, 3-4? Have you got
3-3 overall and 2-1 in conference?
Ooh, getting spicy. I like it. Yeah. So shout out to you guys for hey, bowl eligibility. Maybe.
I doubt it.
Okay. Well,
Speaking of advertisements, are there better ads out right now than the ones with Sauce Gardner? I love those commercials.
Well, Sauce Gardner is awesome, so I don't think I've actually seen any of his commercials.
I haven't seen that either.
Oh, it's
normally Evan and I
a
always
wing
see the
joint.
commercials.
Like I forget which wing joint it's for. I don't know if it's like America's Best or if it's Buffalo Wild Wings, but he's like, or maybe it might be. It actually might have been Wingstop.
Wingstop's been putting out some good ads lately.
Yeah, but like Sauce Gardner in commercials advertising sauce on wings.
Yes,
like it makes sense. It's perfect.
Yeah, if your nickname's gonna be Sauce, you got to plug for some sauce.
Absolutely.
Frank's Red Hot. Eli Manning has been retired for a while. Sauce Gardner, step up, buddy.
Wait, did Eli Manning do Frank's Red Hot?
He was in Frank's Red Hot commercials.
Oh,
Yeah.
I did not know that. Today I learned.
We're learning all kinds of stuff today.
Absolutely. So the Yellow Jackets will take on Virginia next Thursday, October 20th at 7:30 on ESPN. Oh, boy. Now the whole world gets to see whatever's going on over there. Let's see. Let's talk about Maryland for a quick minute. Maryland football lost a squeaker to Purdue What was the final score of that game? It was like 25-23 or something like that?
31-29 was the final.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 31-29. I was at this game. I don't remember the final score. Yeah, so first of all, the officiating was just atrocious. I don't know which game these refs were looking at, but it wasn't this one. There were several missed pass interferences and holds, and I think they missed a targeting as well. But then the call on Maryland's potential tying 2-point conversion right at the end of the game, they called a legal man downfield. Like, it's a 2-point conversion. How far downfield can you be? You're at the 2-yard line. But it looked like the O lineman was about 2 yards deep into the end zone, which is 4 yards past the line of scrimmage, and you're really only allowed 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. So, it was kind of ticky-tack, if you ask me. They didn't need to call that there. I felt like it was a bit of an ump show, honestly.
Yeah, and the frustrating part of that is like getting called for a ticky-tack procedural situation like that. You can live with that because at the end of the day, it's your job to follow the rules. But given what led up to that was a blocked PAT, and that was the reason Maryland was down by 2 at the time. And the blocked PAT was blocked by a dude who was about 5 yards off sides, and they couldn't be bothered to do their jobs and call that a penalty. At that point, I understand technically you're not allowed to have makeup calls. Like the hockey ref got in trouble for that a couple years ago because he got caught on a mic saying, well, we got to get them for something because we kind of messed that previous call up. But in this situation, it feels like, to quote a very angry Terry Collins, you got to give us a shot, right? Like, at that point, you've messed it up in this situation. You've got to let the Terps have a chance here. And at that point, just basic integrity by the officials would say, okay, we're not going to go out of our way to call penalties here. If they do something egregious, if they push off, if they commit a bunch of holds or anything like that, yeah, you got to flag it because it actually impacted the play. But to throw a flag on that after you've already hosed up the game, it's so frustrating because people will say, well, technically it was the right call. I'm like, okay, but that doesn't matter. The only reason they're in this situation is because of an egregious missed call before, and the refs on the field absolutely at that time realized that they had cost the Terps a point previous. Everybody knew it. There's no way the refs were just sleepwalking for the previous 40 minutes of the game, being like, oh yeah, we never missed that call or had no awareness of it. They absolutely understood that they had blown that call. I'm sure Mike Loxley had let them know, you guys really screwed this up. At that point, you got to be more discreet with how you adjudicate the rules here. I mean, it's frustrating as hell because it's been week after week after week with the Big Ten refs and the Terps. I mean, I'm not saying we would have beaten Michigan in the Big House. That was obviously going to be a big ask. But the fact that they couldn't be bothered to review multiple interceptions that looked like they hit the ground and didn't bother to overturn those. There were struggles against Michigan State as well, even though the Terps manhandled them, so it didn't matter. It's just like every week it's a ref show here in the Big Ten, and it drives me absolutely nuts. I realize that college football is the dumb version of football, and the refs, therefore, would be the dumb version of professional football refs. But at some point, you got to do the job right, especially when the job is pretty straightforward, and that's what it has been. And yet it seems like the Terps are always on the wrong end of these ump shows. It's ridiculous.
Loyal listener James is also a high school football referee official. I don't know which exact position on the field he is, but he's officiates games. So I'd be interested in finding out from his point of view. I mean, obviously he doesn't ref college games or NFL games, but just what's it like to be an official in a football game on the field? Like that. There's so much stuff you got to look at. There's so many people running around. Officiating is hard. But
I think in one of his guest columns on our website last year, he talked a little bit about that. Okay. And if I remember correctly, I think he said that he was a back judge.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I'd like to hear more about that. Alabama, number one Alabama, previously number one ranked Alabama, squeaked by against Texas A&M at home in primetime 24-20, and the Aggies got all the way down to the 2-yard line, and they threw an incomplete pass toward the end zone as time expired. So, I mean, if you're number one ranked Alabama, you shouldn't be barely squeaking by a Texas A&M team that then they lost at home to Appalachian State.
Yeah,
So
they've got a couple boo-boos on their resume already.
I think they lost to Georgia Southern or something.
I thought that was Nebraska. I thought that's what got Scott Frost fired.
Yeah, yeah. A&M lost to somebody else they should have beat. But yeah. So which one of you guys put in trouble at UT?
I mean, obviously
Texas?
me. No, that's Tennessee.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't want to write out Tennessee. But, you know, they do play – I think they play Tennessee this week, don't they?
yes,
And that's at Neyland, right?
yes.
Just saying. Tennessee has looked pretty good and Bama has not.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a bit more of a game than we're used to when Alabama goes to Neyland. Normally it's a beatdown, so keep your eye on that one. And the thing with Bama is it's easy to sit there and say that, well, Bryce Young was out, so therefore it's kind of hand-waving these close games. But Bryce Young sat behind Mac Jones, who sat behind Tua, who sat behind Jalen Hurts. All of these guys are supposed to be good, including the next guy up. So why isn't this guy any good? Why can't your offense function when Bryce Young goes down? You always have your best quarterback is the best in the country. The second best guy, your backup, is the second best quarterback in the country, usually in Alabama.
To be fair, we feel a lot less gung-ho about Mac Jones than any of those other names that you just listed off, and this guy was sitting behind him.
I mean, in college, though. Like in terms
Even in college, though, we didn't feel that great about Mac Jones.
But he won whatever the quarterback award is called for best quarterback. He was a Heisman finalist.
He did.
I mean, and again, Bryce Young was the Heisman winner last year. And then next man up, well, where's he at, though?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, the Alabama quarterback needs to play better. That game at Tennessee is Saturday. Alabama's ranked number 3, Tennessee ranked number 6. It's at 3:30 on CBS. College game day back in Knoxville this week.
Yeah, some people were fussing that they didn't go to Ann Arbor because Michigan's playing. I don't remember who they're playing, but they thought that
Penn State.
Yeah, they thought that should have been the game. I'm like, hey, come on, man! Like this is Bama going to Neyland against a top 10 Tennessee team. Like,
don't send college game day there. That gets to be Big Noon Saturday.
There you go.
Yes, we got Big Noon Saturday.
Love it.
Number 10 Penn State at number 5 Michigan. So I'll be checking that game out as well.
Oh yeah. By the way, shout out to Big Noon Saturday that we love to make fun of. They pull ratings.
No,
they pull ratings.
They do. And and they have good games.
They do.
Or alleged good games. Well, they really only have Michigan games. I'm gonna be honest.
That's true.
Right. The last 3 Big Noon Saturdays have all been Michigan games.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, but that makes sense though because Michigan's Big Ten, Fox has Big Ten. That's it's better than Iowa versus Wisconsin, which should just make you want to claw your eyeballs out as the game's gonna end 7-6.
Yeah, Iowa versus Wisconsin. That's when you sleep late.
I didn't realize that networks were assigned to certain conferences.
Yep.
That's one of the issues with the conference realignment, right? Like Fox is with the Big 10, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, but the SEC and ACC are with ESPN. So with Texas and Oklahoma switching to the SEC, there was a whole lot of wondering if ESPN had anything to do with it, taking two of the main draws from the Fox schools and switching them over to
recruiting violations.
See, this is honestly some of the most interesting stuff about college football is the crap that happens around the games that has nothing to do with the actual product on the field. Because we all know the product isn't as good as what you get on Sundays.
No.
So, but it's the politics and the money and the fans and the stupid people that call into the Feinbaum show that.
Yeah, but then sometimes we also get that. You mean Finnebaum?
Yeah,
Finnebaum.
show.
Speaking of Finnabombs or bombs, somebody's suggesting that it would be cheaper to hire a hitman to get rid of Jimbo Fisher than to buy him out.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes.
Gracious.
He said that?
No, somebody called into the Feinbaum show and made that suggestion. And it's just
Lord.
like, for the Feinbaum show, that's just like, yeah, that's just another Tuesday, right? Like, this is how college football works. These people are nuts, man.
Yeah.
Like, Evan lived in the South. He lived it.
God.
Sasquatch lived it. I unfortunately haven't lived it, but, maybe, it can be kind of fun.
Yeah, that's my I agree with you completely. That's my favorite part. Just the craziness. Not even the games. The games are just sort of extra, right? Like, the crazy reality show comes with football in this case.
It's like going to a dinner theater, but like not watching the theater, just going for the dinner.
Yeah,
I mean, if the
watching
dinner's
cast
good,
act
you're,
crazy.
you're going, but you're not going for the main purpose of like why this place even exists.
That's an excuse to have the party. Like, everything else is why we're here.
Yeah. Love college football. It's great. So we'll see how all of it shakes out. Let's see, we talked about that. Some other notable games ranked versus ranked this week. Number 15, NC State at 18, Syracuse, 3:30 on ACC Network. We also got 16, Mississippi State, 22, Kentucky, 7:30 on SEC Network. Kentucky kind of choked, kind of crapped the bed last week. They lost at home to South Carolina.
Ooh,
So
that's not great.
I mean, South Carolina has Marshawn Lloyd.
uh-huh.
DeMatha's Marshawn Lloyd.
I got that.
Yeah.
I'm just
He's good.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to him.
South Carolina as a whole is not great.
No, they're not. So
Like
you can't
85
lose to
kids on
them.
the team, you know?
And I don't like how another SEC East team figured out how to get a conference loss that they shouldn't have.
Evan, you got to give up the dream, man. Georgia's winning the division. Just
Well, I'm hopeful. Tennessee goes to Athens in a couple weeks. I think that's like
And they're going to get
November
blown
something.
out.
I don't think
probably
they'll get blown out, but I mean,
We
Georgia.
are etching. We etched Georgia in stone at the beginning of the season.
But Georgia kind of played with, or didn't even play with the fruit. They were losing to Mizzou for a while. And
Yes,
Mizzou is
they almost lost to
cheeks.
Mizzou. Yeah.
Just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. And then the last game, 7 USC at number 20 Utah is at 8:00 on Fox.
Go Utes.
So, yeah,
don't
check
care.
all of that out. If you
I'm
so
not
desire.
saying that as in like, I'm rooting for them.
You just wanted to say go Utes,
Yeah, I was more doing like, the Jimmy McGill thing.
where he just says go wherever.
Yeah, go Land Crabs. Go Huskers.
He does love to do that. It's one of my favorite things that he does. It's great.
Okay. Also worth mentioning, Corey and Eric back on the mics.
Yeah.
This week, DeMatha Football. Tell us more about that. Where can we find it? And send us some reminders so
yeah.
certain people can remember to check in.
Be sure to follow DM Stags TV on Twitter. We send the links out on that, but it's the DM Stags TV YouTube channel. 7:00 this Friday. It is DeMatha's homecoming game. They are playing against McNamara. McNamara, coincidentally, was also Archbishop Carroll's homecoming opponent a couple weeks ago. So that gives you an idea of where McNamara currently stands in the WCAC. It's not great. When you're Carroll's homecoming
You're
opponent.
two teams homecoming opponents in the same
Yeah.
year. That's tough.
Yeah.
That's
So, but this is a pretty big one because Bill McGregor, DeMatha's head coach, longtime head coach, currently in his second tenure with the school, is going for his 300th career victory, which would make him, I believe, the fourth head coach in Maryland history to reach that mark. So that would be a pretty big deal for him. So Eric and I have a good chance of calling that historic game, which is awesome. So we'll be on the mic along with one of my students, Stephen McDonald, who was on the air with me for our last home game, which Eric was not available for. He did a really good job, really I mean, he kind of reminds me of a younger me, quite honestly. Maybe even a little bit more knowledgeable of football history than we are, if that's possible.
Well, then why isn't he on the pod?
Because he's still a student.
So
I think actually he does do a podcast with a couple of my other students.
So then he's probably got more listeners than we do then.
They might. I don't know.
Yeah,
well, if he has listeners, then he has more than us.
Fair point. Fair point.
Right. All right, so check. What time is that game on Friday?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. All right. Let's. Major League Baseball. The Orioles did not make the playoffs, so there's no news about them, except that they released Jake Reed and signed Jake Cave. So, that's important. The Yankees, Corey, your Yankees
Are in the playoffs.
are in the playoffs, and they won their first game. They got the first run bye out of the wild card series.
Yep.
And they won their first game against Cleveland 4-1.
Yeah. Garrett Cole went 6 1/3, gave up the only run that Cleveland scored on the night. Loaisiga, Peralta, and Holmes shut it down from there. So really strong pitching performance from the Yankees. Yes, I know I misspelled Holmes as Holmes in the show notes, but I did pronounce it right because I do know my players' names. Anthony Rizzo.
Even though they're not on their shirts.
Even though they're not on the jerseys, that is correct. In fact, tomorrow is Jersey Day at DeMatha, and I'll be wearing my 99 Aaron Judge jersey without the word Judge on the back. Anthony Rizzo had a 2-run home run in the 6th inning that gave the Yankees some breathing room. Basically was the kill shot of the game, if you will. For reasons, they have a day off today. I couldn't tell you what those reasons are, considering they're still going to be in New York tomorrow night for Game 2.
Well, and it's really frustrating because tomorrow night it's expected to rain.
Yeah.
So it's like, why the hell couldn't you play today and then travel tomorrow?
Not to mention, tomorrow night, we got things to do. We got to watch Commanders-Bears on Thursday Night Football.
God.
We'll get to that later.
I can't wait to not tune in.
But the game that is scheduled to be played tomorrow, I guess we'll see what happens with what Mother Nature has in store for us. Nestor Cortez is expected to be on the bump for the Yankees. He went 12-4 this season with a 2.44 ERA. Really strong season for him. And the Guardians are expected to start Shane Bieber, who also had a really good season. A little bit higher ERA, but still sub-3, which is really good. And he went 13-8 in his decision. So be interesting to see what happens in this series. I mean, the Yankees certainly got off to a good start, and that's important. I am not too concerned about this series, but obviously it's playoff baseball. Things happen. You still got to play the games.
Yeah, this one felt like, I don't want to make it sound like the Yankees are going to have any must wins until they face elimination against Cleveland because they're clearly the better team. But that was the one where it's like you had the matchup clearly in your favor with Cole on the mound versus Quantrill. It's like you got to get this one, or else you're going to make it more interesting than it needs to be, and you could mess around and end up getting bounced.
Right, and I think that's one of the things that the new format of the wild card sort of does make Game 1 a must-win for the higher seed. That's a really big missed opportunity if you squander that, because you're going to have an advantage on the mound.
Yeah, so, I watched pretty much this entire game. I didn't see the early part, so I didn't see Stephen Kwan's home run, and I didn't see Bader's home run to tie it back up. When I tuned in, Josh Donaldson hit a ball down the right field line, and because, Yankee Stadium is a little tight over there, off the bat, I was like, oh, there's no way it's a home run. I was like, oh, right, Yankee Stadium. It could end up going out depending on the circumstance. Well, the ball hit off the very top of the wall, and Donaldson went into his home run, tried to even high-five the first base coach.
Yep.
And they got caught in between first and second because the umps did not rule it a home run. Now, to be fair, I thought it was a home run in real time when I watched live. I assumed it hit off the top and then a fan hit it, and that's why I went back into play.
I thought it was a home run off the bat, but once, just because, as you said, it's Yankee Stadium, but when I saw it actually hit the wall, I was like, no, that's in.
Yeah.
That's in play.
Yeah, on replay,
what are you doing, dude?
On replay, it was pretty, the first replay angle looked pretty clear. It hit the top of the wall and bounced back in. The second one, a fan kind of maybe got their hand in there, but I was like, there's no way they can overturn it since they called it in play on the field and Donaldson was going to be out. But yeah, Rizzo came up, hit the big home run.
Yep.
And then the Guardians had a chance in Cole's final inning, I guess, when he only got the one out. And I think he gave up at least one base runner. They went to the bullpen. They had it first and second. And Jose Ramirez was on deck. But they were able to get a double play out of it to end the inning, at which point I flipped over to the other game because I was like, well, that was Cleveland's chance to potentially get back in the game.
Yeah, and Loaiziga gave up a couple of hits along the way, but nothing. He didn't feel like he was under any stress, and Peralta and Holmes completely shut them down.
Yeah, they made the pitches when they had to, and they took care of business. So no surprises, the Yankees win game 1.
Yeah, I mean the Yankees. We kind of talked about this a little bit last week when we were previewing the wild card series. The Yankees are lucky that it's the Guardians and not the Rays that they're facing, because the Rays, I think, would have been the tougher matchup, even though they were the 6th team in the AL.
Well, you just got to wonder sometimes, like, the Rays and the Guardians, who's the better team on paper? Tough to say. Obviously, the Guardians beat the Rays to get here, and they earned that.
And they swept them. One of 3 sweeps in the wild card round.
Yeah, but the Rays have been here before. The Rays have beaten the Yankees in the playoffs before.
And they know the Yankees. They played them 19 times this season.
They ain't scared. Whereas Cleveland, they strike me as another AL Central team going to the Bronx. They're scared.
Yeah, it does not work out for AL Central teams in New York, generally speaking.
The vibes aren't there for a victory here. Like, we know the Astros can beat the Yankees. They've done it. We know that the Rays, we know that the Red Sox, if they were in the playoffs, but them AL Central teams, man, the Twins, Cleveland, not feeling it.
Mm-mm. Yeah, not feeling it either. The other series we talked about, let's see, Cleveland swept the Rays right out of the playoffs. Rays unceremoniously bounced from the playoffs. They scored 1 run in the 2 games, and game 2 went 15 innings. So they lost 2-1 and 1-0. And their season's over. Let's see. The other AL East team in the playoffs is not the Yankees. The Toronto Blue Jays in Toronto also unceremoniously bounced from the playoffs. They're done.
In pretty embarrassing fashion in game 2.
Yeah.
They were up, was it 7-1 or 8-1?
8-1.
It was 8-1.
8-1.
In like the 7th inning, wasn't it? Going into the 7th inning,
deep into the game. Yeah,
it was like going into the 7th inning, I think, because then the Mariners, I think they scored like 4-4-1 over the last 3 innings.
Yeah, something like that. It was insane. So Blue Jays, I mean, they have to be one of the biggest disappointments out of all the baseball teams this season, right? Like, there's
I
at least
picked
the
them
American
to win
League.
The AL East.
So did I. In the American League, you got the White Sox and the Blue Jays. Like, y'all are supposed to be the best teams, and the Astros have played 1 playoff game, and the White Sox and Blue Jays seasons are both over.
Yeah. So the Blue Jays get swept at home by Seattle. They blow that big lead, and the worst thing that could happen is when your star player has a very easy quote to be made fun of after you get unceremoniously bounced prematurely in the playoffs. When Vlad Guerrero Jr. says, last year was the trailer, this year's going to be the movie, like indicating like last year was just a tease of what's to come, like we're going to make a deep playoff run, or because last year they just barely missed the playoffs, this year we're going to come get it. It's like,
instead, apparently that teaser gave away the teaser basically gave away the movie.
Yeah, you made it a little further, but it was pretty much just more of the same.
Yeah, you showed all the good parts in the teaser.
Yeah, we got the hints. Fortunately, we didn't have to sit through the full thing. It wasn't The Godfather. It was more like a short.
Yeah. So the Mariners advance. Congratulations to them. Their first playoff appearance since 2001. They are on to the next round. They lost to the Astros in spectacular fashion on last night, 8-7. They were up 7-5.
They're up 7-3
in the ninth
actually.
Inning. Yeah, they're up 7-5, and then with 2 outs, they gave up a 3-run home run to Yordan Alvarez. The game is over. Astros win. The Minute Maid Park is going crazy. That was wild.
And it was 7-3.
Well, he's just saying that like right before that 3-run home run that ended, it was 7-5. But yeah, so they also led 7-3 at one point.
Yeah,
in that
it
game.
was 7-3 going into the 8th. The Astros got 2 in that inning to make it 7-5, and then Alvarez with a 2-out, 3 RBI dinger to walk him off. And I'm just looking at that and I'm like, why are you pitching to Yordan Alvarez in that situation? Like, I get it. You don't want to walk the tying run into scoring position with Alex Bregman at the plate. But Alex Bregman ain't Alex Bregman post-cheating. He's not good anymore. He's okay at best. He's not that good of a hitter. Take your chances with him instead of the giant mountain of a man that cranks dingers all day and is one of the best players in the sport. And, oh, by the way, shout out Robbie Ray. You know, I know
Yes, Robbie Ray. Didn't he win the Cy Young Award?
He did. He won the Cy Young Award playing for the Blue Jays last year, but got rocked by the Orioles and was crying about the Orioles somehow stealing signals. Like the Baltimore Orioles are out here with the cheating scheme, winning all 52 games in 2021, and this guy's whining and Brandon Hyde's yelling at him. It was something else.
Oh, yes. So, Robbie Ray, the Cy Young winner and handsomely paid, comes in to pitch to well, I guess he was in to close the game, but he's a lefty to pitch to the lefty Alvarez, and the ball was still going up when it landed in the upper deck.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was thoroughly crushed. Yeah, like there was no doubt about it.
Yeah, that was crushed. The Phillies swept the Cardinals in maybe the most boring uniform combination of all time in a playoff series.
I said this.
Yes, Eric said that. I didn't watch it. I don't like the Cardinals anyway, so good for the Phillies. Cardinals fans are supposed to be the best fans in baseball. Y'all can just count your 11 championships and shut up.
Yeah, they can do that. And speaking of the Phillies won Game 1 yesterday. They had a little bit of a. They jumped out to a 7-1 lead, I believe, and were holding on for dear life to win 7-6 yesterday. And right now they're playing Game 2. It's currently 0-0 in the bottom of the 4th, with 2 outs and a runner on first for Atlanta.
Yeah, it was a big brain delay to.
This game was supposed to start at 3:30. I don't know what time it actually started, but
if it's in the 4th inning, then it probably started like around 7:30.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the last wildcard series, the Padres beat the Mets in New York. This game went the full 3 game, or this series went the full 3 games.
The only one to do so.
Yes, the only one that wasn't a sweep. And I just feel really bad for the Mets. And
I don't.
Buck Showalter. I'm disappointed.
You can feel bad for Buck Showalter. I don't feel bad for the Mets at all. Like, this is what they do.
It is, but they were doing so well, and then like it was all lined up for them, right? The last weekend of the season, they had Scherzer, DeGrom, and Bassett pitching against the Braves in Atlanta. All 3 of them got rocked, and they lost the division lead. So they had to play in the wildcard series, and then they get to the wildcard series, and Scherzer starts Game 1. He gives up 7 runs on 4 home runs.
That's also what Scherzer does. He gives up home runs. Like, he's a really good pitcher, but the runs he gives up are like almost all on home runs.
Yeah, he does give up quite a few dingers for a guy who's as good as he is.
He did the same thing when he was a Nat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, ask Machado. And then ask Jonathan Papelbon. And then ask Bryce Harper.
Oh, boy. So, and then Game 2, DeGrom started, and I think he only went like 5 innings. But the Mets did win. What'd you say?
I think he got through 6.
6. Okay. Yeah, the Mets did win. But then on Sunday night, when Bassett started, he got rocked. The pitcher for the Padres was Joe Musgrove. He went like 7 scoreless. Buck sent the umpires out to, I guess, caress Musgrove's ears because they look shiny. And maybe there was some miscellaneous goo. Umps didn't find anything. And the Mets go home.
Yeah,
they could have won. They didn't.
I'm going to have to call out my boy Brian Kenny. I love Brian Kenny. He's great. But he was out here putting out some misinformation when it comes to talking about Musgrove and the whole shiny ears thing and miscellaneous goo. and he pointed to the fact that Musgrove's spin rates were up considerably from his regular season averages, blah, blah, blah. Like 5.7% higher spin rates for, on average for his pitches. But he left out the key detail that in the postseason, everybody's spin rate is up by an average of 5.5%. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, that turns that scary sounding 5.7% number into 0.2%, which is negligible at best. Players get amped up, they get excited, they throw a little harder, and when you throw a little harder, the ball spins a little more. It's physics. That's the way it goes. So, Evan and I saw it when Chris Tillman was out there somehow throwing like 96.
Yeah, dude, striking out the side against the Tigers in 2014.
He's just pumping heat,
blowing them away.
Normally he's throwing 89. Somehow he's 96. I was like, where did this come from? But yeah, like players get more amped in the playoffs. The spin rates go up, and frankly, players get checked like every inning now. Mm-hmm. And clearly, the umpires didn't see anything on his hand.
Didn't somebody get checked in his ear the other night?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
like the umpire was stroking his ears. It was very. Like somebody pointed out, it's like if somebody who had never seen baseball, this is your introduction to it, they'd be like, "What the hell am I watching? Like, this doesn't make any sense." Andrew McCutcheon actually had a theory, or he didn't say it was a theory. He was convinced it was true, but it probably has some legs. He claims that Musgrove had red hot on his ears, like that stuff that you use to heat yourself up, and he did it basically to keep himself focused and this, that, and the other, so that he's not getting nervous. Because his ears are burning, and apparently pitchers do this, but it's not sticky. It doesn't give you any type of miscellaneous goo advantage.
So, but red hot can be can have a similar consistency to lotion or something. Is that at all beneficial to pitchers gripping the ball? Or
I couldn't tell you, but all I know is that clearly you could watch the tape. I think John Boy even did a breakdown, your boy, and Musgrove never went to his ear.
Okay, well, that makes that a moot point anyway.
Yeah, exactly. He wasn't frequently going to his ears or anything like that. And people were like, "Well, he wiped his ear off on his shoulder when the umps were coming out." I'm like, dude, if all the stuff could come off that easily by doing that, then it ain't actually something sticky.
Right.
The sticky stuff would still be there.
Besides, when you're a pitcher, you're sweating and you're wearing a hat, so all that sweat, where do you think it's gonna the stuff that's gonna sit and bother you is? It's on your ears, basically.
His ears were really shiny.
If a guy is coming out to you and you have a break, and you feel sweat dripping off your ear, I'll do that.
They're incandescent though, so I think there might have been something there, but I don't know. I just don't know if it was sticky stuff.
Right.
Incandescent ears. That's something. Yeah. So the Braves and Phillies are now in the fifth inning, still scoreless. So we'll see what happens in the playoffs.
Well, we got one more series that you didn't mention.
Did I skip one?
The Padres are.
Oh, the Padres and the Dodgers. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you.
they lost to the Dodgers 5-3 in Game 1, and they are just getting started with Game 2.
Yes. They're gonna throw the first pitch momentarily. All right. So on to basketball. Draymond Green punched his teammate. So we have a mailbag question this week, the first one in a long time. Will Draymond Green be a Warrior next season? Next is italicized, and this is from Rashonda. And next, I assume, means 2023 into 2024, that season. My answer, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they're tired of him.
So you're saying yes, Corey?
To Draymond Green being a Warrior next season?
Going into next season.
Going into next season. I don't know. I feel like Steph might be kind of tired of him, and I feel like what Steph says goes. If Steph is tired of him, I don't think he's going to be there.
Well, if Steph says you're out, you're out. That, there's no doubt about that.
So my question is really I think the question really becomes, is Steph going to say that? Because Steph also doesn't really strike me as the kind of guy who would say that even if he's thinking it.
Well, to me, if Steph says you're out, you're out. But if Steph says you're in, you're not necessarily in. right? Like, let's be clear. Like, Steph doesn't get to decide everybody on the roster. Like,
Sure.
Bob Myers and Joe Lacob ultimately make those decisions.
Yeah.
But the issue here is I don't think this brouhaha, or if you could even call it that, really changes a whole lot in terms of what the Warriors were going to do with Draymond Green, because ultimately it's going to come down to, what do you invest in? Do you invest in this current core of players who has you still in a championship window that is probably not going to be open for very much longer, especially given the fact that Draymond Green is declining, that Klay Thompson probably isn't the player he used to be, and that Steph Curry, as great as he still is 34. So how much longer can they really keep this up? But the issue is they've got other guys to pay too, namely the guy that he punched in the head, Jordan Poole. He wants his money, and he's going to get it.
Oh, yeah.
It certainly seems like the Warriors want to give it to him, especially based off of all the language they were using post-punch. And, I don't blame them for making that decision, because Poole is 23 years old. He was a big part of the reason they were able to win the championship last year. And he's on the ascent. Like, he is an up-and-coming guy who could be a perennial all-star. He is that good. But Draymond Green is a huge part of what the Warriors do. And even though he's not the player he used to be, he's also irreplaceable for Golden State. That kind of puts him in a situation where they can't get rid of him this year. Like, people were saying, oh, they should trade him now. I'm like, they can't trade him now. They're trying to win a championship. And Draymond's still probably the second most important player on that team behind Steph. So it's hard to see them doing that. But he's got a player option next year. The player option was designed to be declined. Like, the whole purpose of it was, you could say, nah, I want you to have to extend me. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to get that extension unless he comes in and plays well this year. And the indications from preseason, which ultimately are meaningless, preseason's preseason, he looked like his shot had improved. He put more arc on it. It was actually going in sometimes, and like on purpose.
He hit some threes.
Yeah, like he hit a couple threes, and they didn't look like they were an accident like they did in the finals. Like, the 2 threes he hit in Game 6 are like, oh, hey, look at that. It actually went in the basket. That's nice. These actually look like, oh, he stepped into this with a guy legitimately closing out and putting a hand in his face, and he hit the 3 and looked like a professional doing it. Like, I was like, wow, that looks like Draymond Green from like 2016. But the thing is, I feel like this, in some ways, it's going to sound weird. It might help Golden State for this season. The fact that this stupid fight happened, and I agree Draymond was completely wrong for what he did. Like, he acted like a fool. But it might help in the fact that Draymond was going to go into this season. The Warriors had already basically told him, we're not giving you an extension now. No way, no how. That's not going to happen. So, and Draymond wants a max deal, which is, a bold ask given that we just saw what happened in the finals, where for periods of time he had to be sat down because he was unplayable. If he goes out there and stinks it up, no questions asked, he's gone. But if he goes out there and plays well, he might earn himself an extension. But what he probably isn't going to do now is run his mouth all season about how I want my extension and going on the Draymond Green show with his one camera and microphone, talking about how he's being disrespected by Joe Lacob and Bob Myers, they need to pay up, and just creating a big distraction and all this drama because he's making it all about him. He can't afford to do that anymore, because his reputation, his clout outside of, not just in Golden State but everywhere else, is compromised at this point. Everybody saw what he did, and what he did was so far over the line that at this point he needs to be a Boy Scout. And I'm not saying that he's going to be perfect, like a mild-mannered dude on the court. He's still going to have his moments where he freaks out on refs and maybe gets teed up. But he can't have episodes that involve his teammates or the organization and put him versus them. Because we've already seen how that played out with Kevin Durant. That was a situation that it really didn't resolve itself at all until Kevin Durant left in the offseason. And the difference here is Jordan Poole ain't going anywhere. So Draymond needs to figure that out. And, ultimately it's going to come down to, are the Warriors willing to say, let's give Draymond this money so that we can keep trying to win? And at that point, they have to let some of their younger guys go. I don't think Joe Lacob's willing to do that. I think that he's a guy who, honestly, he's kind of an asshole. He's got a big ego. and he wants this to be somewhat about him. And it can't be about him if the only time the team wins is when Steph Curry is there. I feel like he wants to build a team that can contend post Steph Curry, which is what his hope is with guys like Jordan Poole, with guys like Jonathan Kuminga and James Wiseman and Moses Moody and even Andrew Wiggins, is we can create a post-prime Steph window.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little crazy because a post-prime Steph window doesn't involve Steph, and Steph is the reason you're winning. Right. So it's really hard. Like, again, I am so high on Jordan Poole. Do I think he's going to be the same level of star as Steph Curry? No, because that would be insane to think that about anybody. I didn't think that Steph Curry would be Steph Curry in 2012, right? He became this by act of sheer will and by an act of God, basically. That's how Steph Curry became one of the greatest players of all time. It's not something that you can see coming, especially for an undersized guard. It's just not something you can bank on, and I think that they need to cash in on what they have now with this core of players. But I don't think that's the direction they're going to
go. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a hard time. Eric, you suggested that Draymond Green wouldn't run his mouth. Like, that's not what Draymond Green does. He's got a lot to say.
He's got a podcast where he's the only voice on it.
Yeah. Imagine hosting a podcast by yourself. Just, I don't know anybody who's done that.
He talks for like an hour a week.
Yeah.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but that's why I made the point of this changes things. Like the way he's viewed, he's going to look like an enormous clown if he continues to go out there and record podcasts. And again, if he wants to talk about the game, if he wants to talk about what he sees from his teammates or from opponents, if he wants to talk about improvements he's seen from Jason Tatum or Giannis or whoever, that's fine. What he can't do is go out there and whine about his contract or whine about the way the organization is operating. And that's something that he absolutely would have done happily before this. I think this changes the way he has to approach that.
Yeah.
Like, he's been giving a giant pass here because the Warriors are not suspending him. They only fined him. Like, he's not going to miss any games. He's returned to the team tomorrow, I believe.
Yep. I thought he returned yesterday. I thought he returned Tuesday.
I thought I saw Thursday. You could be right. But the point is he will play in tomorrow's preseason game.
Right.
Which might be their last one. And then they open the season next Tuesday, and he is going to be out there, which it would have been really awkward if he wasn't because that's, banner night and whatever, and Draymond Green's obviously a big part of that. And, oh, by the way, Draymond's not here to get his ring. So that would suck. But, either way, he clearly deserved some type of suspension, but I also want to give Jordan Poole a lot of credit for how he's handled this because he would have had every right to say, I'm not squashing the beef with Draymond at this point because he doesn't deserve that. He's the one that got punched in the head by a teammate, and it was entirely Draymond's fault. Like, I know people are saying, oh, well, Jordan Poole pushed him, but Draymond got in his face.
Yeah.
And Poole pushed him away. Now, I agree. If you put hands on somebody, you push them away, you got to be prepared that person could swing on you. But that doesn't make it right that the person did it.
Right.
It doesn't justify them doing it. You just have to understand people are crazy. And once you do that, you got to prepare for the worst, especially when somebody like Draymond Green. But he absolutely, to quote Steve Kerr from last year after Dylan Brooks injured Gary Payton II in the second round, Draymond broke the code. You're not supposed to do that to teammates. Like you can have a scuffle in practice, pushing and shoving. And yes, I know Michael Jordan punched Steve Kerr in the face one time. Whatever. This was different. This wasn't in the middle of a play. This was post-play or coaches talking to him. Everybody's standing around. And then Draymond just goes over and towers over Jordan Poole, and Jordan Poole pushes him off him. And then Draymond throws a Superman punch at him. Like, that punch was thrown for the purpose of doing damage. That was not a reactive swing. That was I'm trying to knock your ass out type of swing.
That was I was hoping that you were going to push me to give me an excuse to do this.
Yeah, Draymond was absolutely looking for the beef at that point. And if Poole had said, no, this isn't okay by me. I'm not saying Jordan Poole had the clout to say trade Draymond, but I'm saying, like, if he was like, no, he needs some more time away from me. But Poole seemingly has just said, you know what, whatever, let's move on. And I give him credit for that because he didn't have to do that. He seems like he's ready just to move on. He knows his situation. He knows that he's just got to go out there and play his game. He looks great so far this preseason. And
sexy behind the back floater.
That was dope. That was nice.
Really nice.
That was yeah. Like, and that's the type of thing that he can do. He's legit. Like if he's like, yeah, Tyler Hero got that much money, how much am I going to get? Totally understand it, because I think he's not only better than Tyler Hero, he's going to ascend further than Tyler Hero for sure. So, give that man his money, or somebody else will.
Yeah.
I want to quick mention the Padres have a 1-0 lead in the first inning. Manny Machado hit a home run off of Clayton Kershaw.
Nice. I watched that game last night too. It was a Mike Clevenger. Just got absolutely. He looked horrible, just absolutely awful, and gave up 5 runs, and that was it. I mean, Padres weren't going to get 5 runs off of Julio Urias. So
Clevenger will do that to you sometimes.
He's not very good.
No.
He's coming off of injuries.
But, like,
and
you
stuff.
kind of expected that because, the Padres are coming off of a 3-game wild card series.
Yeah, because they already had to use Snell, Musgrove, and Darvish
Yeah.
in the previous series. So you're getting the 4th guy. They're throwing their best guy.
Yeah.
Darvish is pitching tonight.
Yeah.
So, Eric, give us an NBA preview. You mentioned that the NBA season, which seems like it just ended, NBA season is starting up on Tuesday, which will be before our next show. So give us an NBA preview, and certainly be sure to include who is going to win Coach of the Year and find himself out of a job a year from now.
Yeah, that's all I really care to hear
That's
about this.
That's the whole point.
Because, like, as far as the NBA preview, like, we kind of know the 3 or maybe 4 teams in each conference that's going to be competitive. I mean, maybe it's worth talking about who do you think are going to be, the 7 and 8 teams, but there's no longer just a 7 and 8. There's also a 9 and 10. So how much does any of, like, the regular season predictions matter? Not very much in the NBA, but I do want to hear who's getting fired or getting suspended for a year and then probably getting fired after that.
Yeah.
Or retiring.
Ime is toast. Let's just be clear. Like I know he's suspended for a year. He's done. Like certainly in that town, he's not coaching again for Boston. Anyway, so we'll get to that.
Hold on. Alex Mayo is listening. He said playoff Clayton less than. Clayton Kershaw used to be like, the Peyton Manning of the playoffs, where Peyton Manning would be really good in the regular season and have some struggles. But Clayton Kershaw's been pretty good in the playoffs consistently for the past several years now.
He pitched well in the 2020 World Series. He's had some good starts, some bad starts. So maybe he is like Peyton Manning, where Peyton was kind of bad, then he had some good moments, but then he was kind of up and down, and then he got old and looked terrible that one time. But that was more just because he was old. I'm not going to. But anyway, let's start the NBA. I guess I'll start in the East. I think there are more than 3 or 4 teams that are in the mix this year to potentially win the title. And the East is tough because I feel like everybody that was definitely the prime contenders, the Bucks and the Celtics. I'm a little worried about both, like especially the Celtics, given the fact that they don't have a coach. And one of their key bench players that they signed, Danilo Gallinari, tore his ACL in the preseason, so he's out for the year. So they lose out on some of the depth that they hope to get.
Did you pick him to be the MVP or something? Like,
no, of course not. No, stop. But also, other teams that were kind of on the fringe, I think have made some strides, namely the Philadelphia 76ers. I think they're going to be much better this year. I think that one, James Harden is looking like he's trying to get back to being James Harden. He didn't show up fat and all that stuff. And
that's an improvement.
And I think that he and Joel Embiid will have a decent rapport. Tyrese Maxey continues to get better. They still have Tobias Harris. They still have Matisse Thybulle, who maybe he's not that good, but whatever. They've got a squad that I would definitely keep my eye on. I mean, I would say that James Harden, he's probably the best number 2 player in the entire league, like the second best player on a team. If he's your second best, he's probably the best version of that. Mm-hmm. Like obviously Anthony Davis could be considered that, or Kyrie Irving maybe, but I feel like it's James Harden. And so that puts them in the mix. Joel Embiid is in his prime. They've got a decent crew around them. I think that team could win the East. And no shade to Milwaukee. I feel like people are kind of penciling Milwaukee in as the favorite because everybody thought they would have beaten Boston last year if Chris Middleton was healthy. But at some point, you've got to get better. You can't stagnate. And I feel like the Bucks have stagnated a little bit. Like they're still relying on Giannis, who's obviously great, but Middleton's getting older.
Right.
He suffered an injury last year, and even before he got hurt, he wasn't as good as he had been prior seasons. Drew Holiday is no spring chicken either. He's still very good.
He's been around for a minute.
He's been around for a while. So, at some point, these guys are going to take steps back, and these other teams in the East are coming for you, right? Like Boston already showed they're here. Philly's on the rise. Cleveland made a huge deal to greatly improve their team. They are definitely a sleeper in the East. And then there's Brooklyn, who everybody kind of just said, they suck because they got swept last year. But a full season of Kyrie, KD, and Ben Simmons with some of the other guys they have around them. If Ben Simmons can find a role with that team and not be a total clown, which is a big ask, I know.
It's also a big ask to ask that Kyrie not be a complete clown.
That's a good point. I forgot about him.
He could easily find another way to get off the court.
Oh, yeah, he's an expert at figuring out how not to go to work. Like, even before vaccines and COVID were an issue, he found ways to not show up to work. So, and you got to consider the fact that none of them really want to be there. Like, Kyrie just wants to play so he can get a contract, and KD clearly wanted out, and he's just like, well, this is the best situation I was going to get because they don't have to trade me. So I guess I just got to suck it up and play. Anything. This team is so combustible, but they're also really talented. So,
they are really talented.
Like, if there is a chance that they could just put their big boy pants on and say, hey, let's go try to win a championship. And I wouldn't quite count them out if they're focused enough and they're healthy enough.
I feel like going into the season,
coach?
though, like they're clearly the fifth team in the East to be considering. Like they could ascend beyond that. They have the talent to be better than that.
Sure.
But like they're not trustworthy.
I agree.
Like you look at the Bucks, and the Bucks are a team that, I feel like it's a little bit foolish to like pencil them in as the East champion, but it would also be foolish to say they won't win the East. Like it can really, I think that they probably have a 50-50 shot. But yeah, I mean, like I like the 76ers this year. I like their chances. I think they're going to be really strong.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like the definitive statement that the Bucks would have won their series against the Celtics if Middleton was there, I feel like that's a little reductive. I mean, like you don't really know how that would have played. You don't know how well Middleton would have played. Middleton's had some bad playoff series on his resume. He might have actually set them back if he doesn't shoot well. So
the Celtics played really well in the playoffs last year.
Yeah. And the Celtics, frankly, blew a couple games against Milwaukee. They should have wrapped that series up earlier than they did.
Yeah.
So if you ask me who's going to be the number one seed, I'm going to say the Sixers. If you ask me who's going to win the East, I'm also going to say the Philadelphia 76ers. That's a little tougher. I feel like regular season is easier to predict because I think Embiid's gunning for the MVP. Harden's going to want to prove that he's still an everyday all-star level player. There's other guys on that team that got a lot of prove it in them. Whereas the Bucks, they've already ascended the mountain. Giannis has already won 2 MVPs. He's not going to be all that interested in chasing a third, I don't think. And like we said, Brooklyn's just a hot mess. Cleveland's got to learn how to play together. And Miami is, like, I feel like they were a pretty weak 1 seed as it was. And I don't see them coming out and really having a whole lot of, like Jimmy Butler, frankly, he cruises through the regular season, and then postseason time he turns up.
Yeah.
So, like, realistically, I think the Sixers are the team with the most incentive to really go for it. But I also think that they've got the best crew of guys at this point that can combine a real want to with potential chemistry and talent. I mean, it's them and the Bucks to me.
Yeah.
Like those are the 2 best teams. The Celtics are certainly not to be counted out, and if Brooklyn can get it together, maybe they could be interesting. But
I'll be very curious to see how Miami does as we get deep into the regular season, because I think that they could be a dark horse in the playoffs. I think they could potentially make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even make it to the NBA Finals. But, there are a lot of question marks there.
Yeah, nobody's made any money by sleeping on the Heat, right? Like the Heat always surprise. The Heat are always better than people give them credit for. They're always a presence, so I don't want to count them out either. But this is my point is we've talked about 5 teams now that we could see in the conference finals, and then there's Cleveland too. And
Right.
Cleveland has made a lot of strides. It's a matter of how well it comes together and how well Evan Mobley improves. And
I'd be
how
really
well Darius
surprised
Garland-
to see Cleveland there this year just because they are still so new together.
Sure.
I think that they'll probably push some teams in the playoffs, or at least one team. If they'll have to get through a round to push multiple teams, but I think they'll make their series interesting. But I don't think that they're gonna necessarily have the chemistry, even with a full regular season, to go up against the chemistry of some of these more established teams.
Right. So the fun thing about the East is the fact that now the 10 teams effectively get into the tournament, or at least the bottom 4 play a play-in. There's 9 teams that I really like in the Eastern Conference. Really like is probably strong, but I like the Cavs. I like the Raptors. They've got a good team.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Hawks. They've improved their squad quite a bit, and they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years ago. And I still like the Chicago Bulls. So we're kind of running out of space for teams to qualify for the playoffs at that point. That's 9 pretty good teams, and only 8 are going to get into the big tournaments. So,
Right.
I mean, that's going to be a hell of an Eastern Conference. Imagine getting the 1 seed if you're Philly, and you have to play Trae Young and the Hawks as the 8 seed, who was the guy that sent you home because your previous co-star refused to dunk on him and kicked it to somebody else. I mean, that's at least a fun series. And a 1-8 series typically isn't fun.
No.
Typically it's it's a waffling and you move on. That series is at least very fun. So we'll see. So I guess we'll go over to the Western Conference, and the West has some good teams, but I actually think the East, I'm not going to say the East is better, but the East probably has 9 teams that could get in, like I said, and only 8 spots after the play-in, whereas the West I feel like has a little more consolidation at the top. Obviously Golden State is the rightful favorite to win the West again, but then the Clippers are coming on strong. They've got Kawhi Leonard back, Paul George is back. They really filled out their depth quite a bit last season with a couple of trades. So they go probably 8 or 9 deep and have a lot of length and can really cause a lot of trouble for a lot of teams. And then you've got some of the other teams that were in the mix last year, like the Phoenix Suns. I'm expecting them to drop off a little bit. I mean, they have to, right? DeAndre Ayton clearly ain't all that happy to be there. Right, they jerked him around, so they basically said, okay, well, I guess we'll give you your money. We know about what happened with Robert Sarver. I don't know how much that'll impact what happens on the court. Donald Sterling didn't really seem to affect the Clippers because the players play, the coaches coach, and whatever's going on.
The owners just sit on their mountains of money.
Exactly. They're disconnected. In fact, the players will probably take solace in the fact that they can go play basketball to get away from all the noise. But the Suns have bigger issues in the fact that they won, 64 games last year, had the best record in the NBA by a decent margin, and they lost a Game 7 at home at one point they were down by 42, right? Or maybe even more than that, because I think Breen made a joke when Chris Paul hit a 3, and he said, Chris Paul with a huge 3 to cut it to 42. And I was like, I love that man. So after something like that, and the Suns were running their mouths all season because they went to the finals the previous year. Then they come back, they win 64 games. Everybody thinks they're just going to run through the West. They go up against Luka Doncic, and they had no answer for him. They had no answer for their three-point barrage, and they completely gagged in Game 7. When they had kicked the Mavericks' ass each of their home games, they come home for Game 7. Luka comes out, hits a couple of Luka-esque shots, and it just felt like at that point, the Suns locked up, and they were like, oh, crap, this guy came to play tonight. This is going to be really, really hard. And they started missing some shots. They didn't score for a solid 7 minutes at game time. It was just really ugly basketball.
I won't write them off as potentially being the 1 seed in the West, but I don't think they have it to actually make it to the NBA Finals or even really the Western Conference Finals. I think they're a really good regular season team, but they don't strike me as a team that has a lot of resiliency when push comes to shove and they have to play a best of 7 series against a really good team.
Well, they also clearly have some internal problems because Jay Crowder seemingly, I don't know if he wants to trade, or I think it's more the Suns want to trade him. He's one of their starters. Like, now they probably want to replace him with Cam Johnson, and that's probably not a bad replacement. But the fact that you had Cam Johnson coming off the bench shows that you had amazing depth, right? Like, you 7 or 8 deep where you have legitimate starter potential players coming off your bench. Well, you lose that if you trade one of them and give a bench player his starting spot. Then you consider the fact that JaVale McGee, who, yes, actually is pretty good, was their backup center, and now he's gone. He's been he signed with the Mavericks. And, now you've got DeAndre Ayton, who, like we mentioned, not really too happy with his situation. Chris Paul, who is getting older and older. And they went for it last year. They won 64 games, and it blew up in their faces. They didn't win, anything remotely close to as much as they were supposed to in the playoffs. I feel like the team just has that they don't take the regular season as seriously because they're like, it doesn't matter until the playoffs anyway. So I feel like their foot's going to come off the gas a bit. They're not going to have that go for it. And it should be mentioned, the Suns were one of the few teams in the West that stayed consistently healthy last year, which is a big part of the reason they won as many games as they did. Whereas Golden State was right there with them until Draymond got hurt and then Steph got hurt late in the season. That's sort of why Golden State, regular season-wise, fell off a little bit. So I'm expecting some regression from the Suns. And as far as being a legit threat to win the West, I can't see it. Just can't see it at all. The Denver Nuggets, however, that's a team that intrigues the hell out of me because obviously we know Nikola Jokic is great, back-to-back MVP. They made the Western Conference Finals in the bubble. Jamal Murray was an absolute legend in the bubble. We know how good he is, and he's finally going to be back on the floor this year.
Yeah, we didn't see him at all last year.
He didn't play at all. Michael Porter Jr. is going to be back. So that's their 3 best guys. 2 of them were missing the entire season last year, and they still managed to get a 6 seed and win over 50 games.
If it's not going to be the Warriors, this is the team I'm pulling for.
Yeah, like I really want to see what the Nuggets can do because the issue that they had last year against Golden State was they couldn't defend them, right? Like, Jokic was getting picked apart in pick and roll. He's not a particularly good defensive center, which is kind of tough to cover for because your 5 is supposed to be your defensive anchor. And frankly, I don't see how Michael Porter Jr. or Jamal Murray make them better defensively. Now, offensively, they're obviously a big improvement. They could take some of the load off of Jokic. And then at that point, maybe Jokic turns it up a bit more on defense and he improves in that aspect.
I mean, I think they're also they're more talented players, and that is going to benefit the defense at least marginally.
Well, also, it'll help a lot that Jokic doesn't have to worry about going to the bench and the team getting outscored by 13 points in the 6 minutes that he's not there. And that happened a lot during the regular season. Like, when Jokic was off the floor, the Nuggets were garbage. And when he was on the floor, they were really good. So having more depth, better players, again, this is also a chaining issue here. You had some guys that were serviceable as starters, but they're much better as bench players, and now they're going back to the bench because Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are replacing them in the starting lineup. That makes your bench better. You can stagger the minutes with Jamal Murray kind of running the show while Jokic is on the bench. There's all kinds of things you can do to make your non-Jokic minutes more palatable, and that's going to make this team a whole lot better. So, yeah, they're certainly in the mix. The defense is going to matter, though, and I'm not saying they can't do it. I just want to see them do it and see how it turns out because, I mean, what more do you need than arguably the best player in basketball having 2 legitimate wingmen with him? I mean, that's what you're hoping for if you're the Nuggets. So, not to mention, they also picked somebody up in a trade. They got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Oh, yeah, they did.
The Wizards traded for, I'm forgetting everybody's name, Monte Morris and one of the other Nuggets. He's not going to make the Wizards any better, so, notice we haven't talked about them, and I don't plan to. So
yeah, they were distinctly not one of the 9 teams that we mentioned in the East.
I want them to tank for Wembanyama, but that's tough to do. So anyway, yeah, I'd like to see what the Nuggets do. Talked about the Clippers. The Grizzlies are obviously interesting. They were really good last year, but I don't really see how they got better. And again, if you're not getting better, you're probably getting worse. Jaren Jackson Jr. is injured coming into the season, so I think their regular season number is going to be a little bit muted this year because I feel like Jaren Jackson Jr. was like John Morant's the star. Jaren Jackson, I think, is the lifeblood of that team because he's one of the few two-way players that can actually really cause problems for small ball lineups because he's not technically a center, but he's really long and really athletic, and he can also be a presence on offense. He was giving Draymond Green fits last year. And, if he's compromised this season, their season's over before it starts. But hopefully he gets healthy, and then the Grizzlies could still find their way into the playoff spot, at which point I think they'd be legitimately very dangerous. And we also have the Timberwolves. Timberwolves made a big trade. Rudy Gobert gave him a whole bunch of money, gave up a whole bunch of draft picks for him. Again, this is a curious case of how do you build your team? You have a center in Karl Anthony Towns who can't really play the role of defensive center because he's not a good defender. That's why you bring in Rudy Gobert. But Rudy Gobert gets played off the floor sometimes because he's forced to go out there on the perimeter and guard smaller players.
And sometimes he plays the whole league off the floor by giving everybody COVID.
That can also happen, yes.
That's true.
Yes, that's what my co-hosts know him for, which is totally fair. And, so there's ways that Towns and Gobert could complement each other defensively, especially if Towns is willing to discipline himself in that way. And then you've got the growth of Ant-Man, who was awesome in that whatever movie that was. Corey seemed to enjoy that.
The growth of Ant-Man.
No, not
I think that's just Ant-Man.
No, not Ant-Man like Paul Rudd Ant-Man. Anthony Edwards.
Oh, you're talking about the movie with Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Hustle.
Yeah, Hustle. Yeah.
Hustle was good.
I was going to call it Hustlers, but I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a different movie. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Hustle was good.
So I love Anthony Edwards. He's great. He's great in front of a microphone too. He should have his own podcast. Maybe he should join the Draymond Green show, and they could be remiss about stuff together. But
I'd prefer just to listen to Ant-Man.
I probably
his
would
own
too.
podcast.
I agree. He's great. But again, that's sort of a weird team. We saw them in the playoffs. They showed a lot of potential, but they also showed that they were really dumb. Like their team IQ wasn't there, and you can accept that from Anthony Edwards. He was 20 years old.
They also had to deal with constantly being interrupted in the middle of their series by crazy fans.
Yeah, the protester fan. I don't even know if they're actually fans, but they were clearly protesting something. But yeah, like Karl Anthony Towns is supposed to be a veteran at this point, and he hasn't really shown that he can be that dude to lead. So I just worry that this team doesn't have the top end guy that really makes you say, "Oh, gotta watch out for that guy," and that could derail their hopes of winning the West. And the last team that interests me, I guess two more. I'll talk about the Mavericks too. I feel like the Mavericks are toast. Like they haven't really gotten better. And they got to the conference finals last year, but they were clearly outclassed by Golden State. And they probably shouldn't have been able to get past the Suns, but the Suns gagged. And they haven't really improved their team much. They signed Christian Wood, who's okay, and JaVale McGee, who helps them a little bit with the rim running, but they still don't have a complementary star with Luka Doncic. And newsflash, the rest of the West has gotten a lot better and a lot healthier. It just feels like they've stagnated in a time where you absolutely could not afford to. Like, I think they make the playoffs, but a top 4 seed like last year, probably not.
Did Luka slim down at all?
I think so.
Okay.
Like
he was looking kind of chubby last year.
And the year before.
Yeah, and the year before.
Like,
that's true.
I still don't
4
understand
seasons.
how he came into last season so hefty when he played in the Olympics. So, like, he was still in playing shape in, like, early August, and a month later, he's fat as hell. Like,
Maybe he was eating Doritos and drinking Mountain Dew in that month.
yeah, but only for a month. Zion was doing it for, like, the whole year because he couldn't stand up. His foot was broken. Like,
Well, I mean, I can say I put on some weight pretty quickly when I started eating a whole bag of pizza-flavored goldfish a day. So, sometimes life comes at you fast.
I do like me some pizza flavored
that
goldfish.
stuff's really good. That's
Yeah.
really good stuff. I can see how that happens. Like, you get hooked on a snack, and that's how you get fat. So, fair point. Anyway, Pelicans, speaking of Zion, He's healthy. He's apparently fit. He looks fit. And the Pelicans looked really impressive late last year. Like, they battled their way through the play-in to get to the first round, and they gave the Suns fits in the first round. And then you add their best players back, they could have something here. Like, this
Who else do they have on that team? Because honestly, Zion Williamson is the only guy that I know off the top of my head.
Well, they traded for C.J. McCollum in the middle of the season. They also have Brandon Ingram. And they've got some of the younger guys who aren't quite super talented, but they're scrappy. Like, this is a team that's really built itself up kind of out of nowhere. And
I mean, McCollum is a good player.
Absolutely. Like,
did he come straight from Portland, or did he have another stop along the way?
He came straight from Portland.
Okay.
So, like, this is probably my most interesting team that probably isn't a top 5 contender or so. Like, I could see them really making strides. Like, this could be a team that wins a lot more games than people think in the regular season, and then ends up getting waffled in the playoffs by somebody. It wouldn't shock me if they were a top 4 seed, but then in the first round they go in a 4-5 matchup, and they just go matched up against a team that has more experience and a little bit more, maybe a better star or something like that. Like, they could get
maybe a team that you haven't mentioned yet out west, like the Warriors.
That's right. I haven't mentioned the Golden State Warriors. But the Golden State Warriors aren't going to be a 4 seed. So
okay.
I
I was wondering if, like, for some reason you think that they might slip down during the regular season and only be like a 4-5.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. So, yeah, but I can see them getting matched up against a team like, say, the Clippers, who might take their foot off the gas a little bit because Kawhi is older and is coming off an injury, and Paul George gets hurt. And so a little bit of load management, they lose some more games, and they end up as a 4 seed, and they get matched up against a young Pelicans team, and they take them to task. That would not shock me at all. I guess I should talk about the Lakers. The Lakers stink. Someone's got to say it. I have absolutely no earthly idea how they are the 4th betting favorite to win the West. What? That is outrageous. Fade that, please. I'm begging you. Do not bet the Lakers plus 550 to win the West. It ain't gonna happen.
Plus 550?
What are we doing? Like, they are... Okay. The Lakers are plus 550 to win the West. The Nuggets are plus 725. I don't think I have to say more. Yeah, you're going to have to explain that to me. Like, that feels like a Lakers tax right there. Like, it's just what it feels like. They're the LA Lakers,
Lord.
Brand recognition, Bron's on the team. Everybody say, well, they got to be a contender because they got Bron on the team. Like, Bron's old.
Yeah, they're definitely taking advantage of the less knowledgeable.
Yeah, people that just say, oh, bet on the Lakers. They're worse than they were last year. And they were horrible last year. They were like, what, 16 games under 500?
Did they make the play-in tournament?
No. They didn't even come close. They sucked. They were like legitimately an awful team.
Yeah, I don't know what could give you the impression that they're going to be better this year. Like, the rest of the West is probably a little bit weaker as a whole than it was last year, so I could see them maybe being a play-in team, but that's not saying a whole lot. Like, if you're maybe going to be a play-in team, you're not a team that people should be betting on to win the West.
Well, their benefit is the fact that they could be a play-in team because the Jazz are going to fall out. They traded away their 2 best players. The Spurs traded away their best guys. So those teams are clearly going into the tank. But, so that takes out 2. You could be one of the 2 replacing them. But beyond that, as a contender, no chance. No shot. Unless they broker some absolute fleece of a trade and get Russell Westbrook up out of there, this team's going nowhere. So, yeah, let's talk about the Warriors. Defending champs. Talked about Draymond Green quite a bit. But he's going to be there. And Steph's going to be there.
And Jordan Poole's going to be there.
Jordan Poole's going to be there.
Klay Thompson's going to be there.
And Andrew Wiggins. And Kevon Looney. Mm-hmm. And some of their younger guys. James Wiseman is healthy.
They will not have...
no Gary Payton II.
Which is unfortunate because I really liked him. Where'd he go?
He signed with the Blazers.
Okay.
And no Otto Porter Jr. He signed with the Toronto Raptors.
And also Andre Iguodala retired, right?
Well, he's back.
Oh, he is back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought he was retiring.
Steph talked him into coming back.
Okay.
He's probably going to be like a Udonis Haslem type.
Yeah, just kind of like good
much.
Locker room guy. Yeah. Somebody kind of,
Like, he straight up said, if I'm coming into the game, that means you young guys are messing up. Like if they're putting me in the game, it's because y'all are messing up and Kerr doesn't trust you. So you need to not have that happen. So
Sounds like Rugnet Odor.
yeah, Iguodala's a good clubhouse guy. The difference is Iguodala was legitimately a really good basketball player at a time, whereas Rugnet Odor just punched a guy in the head.
Iguodala would be better at basketball right now than Rugnet Odor is at baseball right now.
Like Iguodala
by
can
a
still
lot.
Iguodala can still go out there and give you some minutes and lock somebody up. He's still got some game. You can't trust him to stay healthy. He's too old. But anyway, so they lost Gary Payton II, which is a big loss aside from the fact that he's awesome and really likable. He's also a cheat code on defense.
Yeah.
And Otto Porter was a really clutch off the bench guy for him. But they did sign White Dante DiVincenzo, who I think is really good. That is a really good pickup for them. Obviously, he doesn't defend at the same level, but he's a really good shooter, a talented playmaker. I think that's a really good acquisition for Golden State. And they also signed JaMychal Green, who's a solid stretch four, he gives them a little bit more size, gives Looney or Draymond a break. And then again, there's the young guys. Moses Moody, who got a few minutes in the playoffs last year, he contributed. James Wiseman, like I said, is healthy and he looks pretty good. He's going to get an opportunity to get some burn, especially off the bench. He looks like he's going to be a really good lob threat off of pick and roll with either Steph or Jordan Poole, depending on who he's out there with. I mean, he just looks huge on the floor. Like, he looks bigger than everybody else. Even though there are probably bigs that are as big as him, for some reason, he stands out for his size, probably because he moves so well for a big man. Like, he moves like a guard, but you see how ginormous he is, and you're like, oh my God. Like, that guy doesn't look like he should be playing the same sport as everybody else. But it's a matter of him getting his feel for the game, his confidence, finding a role with the team, figuring out how to be a better defender, all that type of stuff. But I think these young guys are going to play quite a bit because the older players are going to need some time off. You don't want Steph out there 82 games. You don't want him out there 40 minutes a night. He's 34 years old. He's your best player. He's arguably the best player in the world. And he is the key to you having a shot at repeating for a title.
You have to keep him fresh for the playoffs.
Absolutely. Same thing with Clay. Same thing with Draymond. I mean, all three of those guys have had injuries before. You got to keep your best players fresh. And then Andrew Wiggins is great, or pretty good. I'm not going to say he's great, but he was great last year in the playoffs.
He was excellent.
I think that he's going to be motivated because he's up for an extension, not just because of his contract here, but because now he has the confidence that he can be that dude on a championship team. Like, he even talked about how last year he was pulling so many rebounds, and he was like, why the hell was I only averaging like 4 rebounds a game? I can do this. I can go pull boards. I should be averaging 8, 9 rebounds a game at least. And I'm like, well, if you go out there and play like that, you're going to be that much better for it. So, this team seems really motivated, and despite the Draymond drama in the preseason, it just feels like they're gung-ho to repeat. And I'm not going to bet
against reason
against
why
them.
they can't.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't bet against them. They're the betting favorites to win the West. I think for some reason they're the second favorite according to Vegas, and Boston is the favorite. I don't get that. But what do I know? I just watch a lot of basketball and I don't really like basketball. But okay. Anyway, so the Warriors are really good. They're really deep. The one guy I haven't mentioned is Jonathan Kuminga. I'm not sure what his role with this team is going to be just because there's so many mouths to feed. There's so many minutes. There are only so many minutes available, and he's a guy who has all the potential in the world. But
he got some decent minutes in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, but towards the end he didn't because he's just so raw and he's got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
But his talent jumps off the screen. Like, he's a great athlete. He's got the potential to be an all-world defender. Like, a lot of people hope that he could potentially be, if Draymond does not continue his tenure with the Warriors after this year, that Jonathan Kuminga could be the guy that fills that role in some capacity.
I can see it.
Because he's got the length, he's got the athleticism. He just needs to develop the habits and the IQ. But you only do that by playing and getting more experience. So we'll see how his season goes because I feel like he feels a little bit like the odd man out right now. But the Warriors can't afford to have this plan to develop these young players and not have them in the lineup. So they've got to play. So that'll be – we'll see how Steve Kerr handles all that because, like I said, there's going to be an emphasis on winning, but there's also going to be, as always, when you've got younger players on the team, there's an emphasis on development as well. So for the Western Conference, my pick for the number 1 seed is the Golden State Warriors. I think that they're too talented in the starting lineup. They just won a championship, and I feel like their depth is going to have them just kicking the crap out of people's second units. And with that being the case, I'm also picking them to win the West, and frankly, I'm picking them to repeat. I can't go against them. I don't see the Sixers being able to match up with them. I don't trust the Clippers enough to stay healthy to really give them a run. If the Clippers stay healthy, they could really push this team. But that's the only team in the West that I think they should be, not afraid of. They shouldn't be afraid of anybody. But that's the team to keep your eye on to potentially threaten them. Obviously the Nuggets too. But Golden State seems like the most complete team, and they've got the playoff experience. They've got the chemistry, and frankly, they've got the best player. I'm taking Steph over anybody right now, and that includes Giannis.
The only one of those 3 predictions that I'm going to disagree with you on was just going to be the 1 seed. I think that that's going to be the Nuggets.
Okay.
I think that my biggest concern with the Warriors during the regular season is just that they are going to want to rest some of their top players. Guys like Steph and Clay and Draymond are not going to be playing in every game. And while they're probably going to win the vast, vast majority of the games that those 3 guys do play in, that means, to win to get the 1 seed in the West, they're going to have to win a lot of the games that they're not in, which I don't think is going to be like a negligible amount of their games. And I think the younger guys, as talented as they are going to need some time to gel and to kind of, figure out those roles when they are not supplementing Steph and Clay and Draymond.
Yeah.
And so I think that they are going to drop some of those games that maybe they have the talent to win, but just aren't quite ready to win all of them at this point. So I think that the Nuggets are probably the best team to take advantage of that and get the 1 seed. I'd still say that the Warriors should be the 2 or 3 seed at worst. But yeah, once they get to the playoffs, I mean, those guys are going to turn it on. You're going to see Clay and Steph and Draymond out there every day. And I have no qualms about picking them to repeat as Western Conference champions or to repeat as NBA Finals champions.
Yeah, and the only reason why I would maybe disagree with you about the Nuggets is that they also could potentially have load management things because their 2 best players are coming. Their second and third best player, I should say, are coming off of injuries, particularly Jamal Murray, a lower extremity injury like that. He might miss time as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. And Michael Porter Jr.'s had back issues basically since he was in college. So, hoping that they could stay healthy, but I feel more skeptical about their health outlook than I do Golden State. So that's probably why I would lean Golden State there. But at the end of the day, what matters is who ends up winning the West, and I think we're pretty decidedly on Golden State's side at that point.
Absolutely.
So just a couple of predictions. MVP, this is so tough because
just pick a name. We don't care. We just want to get to
You just want to get to the meat.
Yeah, we want to get to the Coach of the Year, man.
The Coach of the Year, huh? The guy I'm going to get fired? Okay. Okay, so MVP, I'm going to say Joel Embiid. With apologies to Steph Curry. I think Steph should be number 2. But you're right, Corey. I feel like Embiid's going to play more than Steph because Steph is older. And Embiid has been, I think, the runner-up for MVP the last 2 years. And he's probably pretty pissed about that. I don't blame him. And I think the Sixers are going to have the team to back him up this year. And I think this is his year to get it. Mm-hmm. Coach of the Year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Who is getting fired? Now, I don't feel as good about deliberately picking somebody to get him fired.
Well, no. So what you did last year was you said this is the guy who either, if he coaches well, he's going to win Coach of the Year. And if he coaches really bad, then he's going to get fired.
Well, that's what
There's really no in between.
That's what I did with Brandon Staley last month. Yeah. And I'm right.
We'll get to him in a minute.
He's looking toast as far as I'm concerned.
It's funny, too, because I had some concerns about him early last season, and then I kind of came around.
And now
I'm back on. Yeah, I'm like, man, I should have stuck to my guns.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So if I was feeling vindictive, I would say Chris Finch, but I don't actually think Finch is going to win the award.
Who does he coach?
He coaches the Minnesota Timberwolves. He had some absolute horrific brain farts where he just let the Grizzlies go on like a 21-point run in the middle of a playoff game. And
he's just standing there watching.
He's just standing there watching, just snoozing. Not
like
actually
bought a ticket.
Yeah, like he's just sitting there and like, oh, gee, maybe this is really bad that my team's blowing a 21-point lead in a playoff game at home. Maybe I should do something about it. It's just so bad. So I'm not going to tap him because I don't think he's actually got a chance to win. I feel bad doing this because I really like him. I'm going to pick Willie Green. Willie Green's coaching the New Orleans Pelicans. This is my second bite of the apple of picking a Pelicans coach. The last one was Stan Van, and, well...
We all know who that ended.
I thought you picked him as the coach of the Pistons.
No.
He was with the Pelicans.
And to be clear, Stan Van was awful with the Pistons. Absolutely awful. But that was more because of his GMing than his coaching. The Blake Griffin trade, it's just so bad. I love you, Stan Van, but that was rough. But yeah, he got fired because he couldn't get along with David Griffin. And so now I'm picking Willie Green because Willie Green seemingly can get along with David Griffin, and I think the Pelicans are going to take a leap this year. They're going to be really exciting. Like I said, they could be a top 4 seed in the West, and I don't see really anybody else. Like Doc Rivers doesn't really fit the description, although he would be really easy to get fired if I picked him because if they underachieve, he's probably toast. I can't pick the Celtics interim coach, whoever that is. They
haven't named one, have they?
Oh, they did. They picked some guy, but I forget what his name is. Bud's not going to win. There's no way. Steve Nash definitely isn't going to win because he can't actually coach. So, why
hasn't he been fired?
That's a very good question. That is an outstanding question because that's ridiculous that he's still there. Mike Malone, I think the Nuggets have been around long enough. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Willie Green. Sorry, Willie. I'm really, really sorry.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a scenario that he gets fired, but I couldn't do that.
Well, we couldn't imagine
Ime
Ime Udoka either.
It's this power.
Or Sean Payton.
Sean Payton? How did they get him fired? Like, what? Stan Van was a one and done as an NBA coach. Like, how? Like, okay, Freddie Kitchens made sense. I'll give you that. Freddie Kitchens totally made sense, but the other three don't. And then, of course, Scott Brooks, after they said they were keeping him, and then I made a joke and they fired him. I'm just like, oh.
Just don't ever
Just
don't ever predict me to be like the Washington Post All-Met Coach of the Year.
Do they have that award for cross country or track?
I think they do Coach of the Year. Yeah.
Well, we don't really do those kind of predictions on this show, so I think you're safe. But here's what could happen. You could get fired and then get a better job. So maybe I will be helping you advance your career.
I'm not sure where I would get a better job.
Well, maybe this podcast takes off and we become successful.
Well, I mean, considering we're still averaging, 1 or 2 live listeners.
Well, maybe this is the motivation we need.
Maybe 10 listeners a week.
Maybe we need to get our producer fired, and so he gets motivated. Like Oprah, she got fired as a reporter, and then she became Oprah.
I'm plenty motivated. I don't need to be fired to be more motivated.
You never know. Anyway, Willie Green, Coach of the Year. I am so sorry. I gotta pick somebody I think is gonna win. I can't deliberately pick somebody I don't like just to get him fired. That's
Scott Brooks.
Yeah, Scott Brooks. Yeah, he did. Screw him. But again with Brandon Staley, I was like, it's legitimately you either coach your ass off and you'll win this award, or you act like a clown. I almost used a bad word there that emulates our chat name Corey with Drew. That was the word that came to mind, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Anatomically gifted Nicholas.
No, it wasn't that. But
no, it was it resembles dipstick. Let's put it that way. Yes.
Oh, okay.
But that's my NBA preview. Scintillating as always.
Willie Green.
Yeah, Willie Green. Willie space capital Green.
No, third E.
No, it's not like Joe Green.
Okay.
It's just the color green.
Okay.
And it's like Willie Mays.
Mm-hmm.
There you have it.
But not the color Willie Mays.
Jeez.
Because Mays is a color too.
Go to the next
Mays
segment.
is also a starch.
Let's move on to football, please.
Okay. On to football. Our apologies to Coach Willie Green. Wish you the best in your future endeavors. Start with the Ravens. The Ravens won a game. They did not spectacularly blow the lead and lose this time. They did blow a big lead again, but the Ravens won as time expired on Sunday Night Football versus the Cincinnati Bengals, 19-17 on a Justin Tucker 43-yard field goal, and that broke a streak of 5 consecutive home losses. Which isn't great. I attended on November 28th the most recent home win. That was against the Browns, also on Sunday Night Football. But glad to be back in the win column. Ravens lead the AFC North as the only winning team in that division. So supposed to be one of the best divisions in football, but that's not what has played out so far. One thing I am happy to see, left tackle Ronnie Stanley returned to game action this week after he suffered a horribly broken ankle about 2 years ago. He underwent multiple surgeries. He did come back and play week 1 of last season, but he obviously wasn't quite right. And on Sunday night, he sort of rotated in and out. He didn't just get out there and play every snap. He was, like a series in, a series out, or so. Very, very glad to see that. And good for him as well. I'm sure it was a grueling rehab process. And certainly every surgery is a major surgery if it's on me. So being put to sleep and cut open multiple times seems unpleasant. Also unpleasant, safety Marcus Williams was placed on IR after suffering a dislocated wrist. I don't even know what that is, and hopefully he's back soon. Also on the injury front, Tyus Bowser and David Ojabo, outside linebackers, returned to practice today. They're both coming off of torn Achilles. Bowser's occurred in the Steelers game in the season finale back in January, and David Ojabo, I'm sure all of y'all have seen this, the guy who was working out at his pro day up in Michigan, who just collapsed on the ground in a heap, writhing in pain, and there's a bunch of coaches and scouts and stuff, and they just stood there and watched. That was David Ojabo, so he's on the mend and on his way back soon. Ravens will take on the New York Football Giants up in New Jersey, and ya boy bought a ticket. So I will see you from the Met-O-Lands, and hopefully it doesn't go too bad up there.
So real quick on Justin Tucker and that game-winning 43-yard field goal.
He's awesome.
So it was so dead center of the uprights that if the uprights were only half a yard wide, that's 18 inches wide, it would have been good. There's actually, I guess, a group that tracks middle of the upright accuracy among kickers, and no surprise, he leads the league in that. He is amazing.
Watching him kick footballs is legitimately fun. Normally you watch a kicker and you're just praying he doesn't mess it up. Watching him, it's I want to see this. The 58-yarder that he hit was just majestic. Even the shorter kicks, the 43-yard game winner, it's just off his foot. It's that is so nice. It's just it's a perfect parabola. It's it goes straight as a string, right down the chute every time. It's so good. Sean freaked me out a little bit because I thought he was maybe a little ahead of us watching the game, and he used an expletive right when Tucker was about to kick the field goal, and I was like, did he miss this? And then I saw it come off his foot. I was like, no. Come on. I'm what? That didn't happen. What are you talking about?
So glad that it wasn't, 44, 45 yards. I probably would have lost the Drew at that point.
Yeah, you skin of the teeth on that victory, man.
I'm still praying because we still got stat corrections from Elias that are coming.
Yeah, because he moved ahead of you, but you had.
I moved ahead of him.
Or the kick put him ahead, but then you had to take off a half a point.
Yeah,
and then so that moved you back ahead. I was just thinking the whole time. I was like, man, if I was Drew, I would be throwing stuff at my TV. We'll get to the Bengals in a minute. When they just...
No, we'll get to the Chiefs or the Raiders. In a minute, because they suck too and cost me a fantasy game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're hosting, so you want to do that now?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's it on the Ravens. Yeah. We'll talk about their game coming up. Yeah, let's get to the Raiders, who, them and the Commanders need to be contracted from the league. Y'all gotta go. This is just pathetic on all fronts. So I was facing, and of course it's about me personally, right? Like, it's I don't care about anybody else. It's about me and my fantasy team. So I was going up against Travis Kelce on Monday night. I was out of players. My opponent only had him, and I was up by like 25 points. Travis Kelce gets 25 total yards receiving, but catches 4 touchdowns. And I lose.
It's like a Mike Tolbert stat line.
Right. Yes.
You've got to be kidding me. So the Raiders, I hate y'all now. You're on my list. There's no getting off the list, like ever. You're on my list. Just pathetic, right? Like, you're in the red zone because your defense is getting toasted. As usual, so you're defended, you're deep in your own end. Maybe cover the guy who's going to the Hall of Fame. Maybe, instead of just leaving him wide open. There's nobody around him, just waltzing through the grass. Just pathetic out of y'all. So moving on to the Raiders in general, what were they doing, kicking or going for 2? Late, they end up losing 30-29. They scored a touchdown to get to 29 points, and instead of kicking the extra point to get to 30-30, they decided to go for 2. There was like 4 minutes left, and your defense was getting toasted. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, so I don't know what they were doing there.
I guess you figure it's kind of a similar thought. So, like, when you're down by 14, you score a touchdown, you go ahead and go for 2 so that, if you can score another touchdown, then you either kick the extra point to take a 1-point lead, or that you need to go for 2 again to tie it up. I guess they're thinking it's kind of a similar concept here where you go for 2, you either take the lead, and if they score, then you score again, and you can kick an extra point to win. If they score the extra point, the problem is, say you go for 2, you fail, they score a touchdown, they go for 2. Well, now it's a 2-possession game, and you're screwed.
Also, what happens if nobody scores again the rest of the game?
Then you lose.
Like what happened,
right?
Yeah. Like this.
I'm not saying that it was smart. I'm just saying I kind of see like where they maybe were trying to take the next logical step from that part of analytics, but it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and it didn't work. But it also it doesn't work.
This didn't compute at all for me. I don't understand why people obsess over taking a lead in a situation where you can't realistically hold it. Mm-hmm. Right, like that doesn't do you any good, right? Like, there's 3 scenarios here. Okay, you kick the PAT, you tie the game up. There's 4.5 minutes left. Now you have to stop the Chiefs. If the Chiefs get down in scoring range and kick a field goal and walk you off, you're done. Okay, so then you go for 2 and you get it. Now you have to stop the Chiefs. If the Chiefs go down the field and get in position to kick a field goal, they can walk you off, and you're done. It's the same situation I just described. You have to do the same thing. But the difference is, scenario 1, it's 30-30. They're allowed to punt in that situation. They don't have 4 downs. They have 3. If it's 31-30 and they're losing and they give you the football back and they lose as a result of that, they're not punting. That means you're giving Patrick Mahomes and the best offense in football an extra down to play with. You're not stopping them at that point. It's never going to happen.
Well, they've done such a great job of stopping them before that in the game. Oh, wait, that didn't happen.
The other side to it also is that, if you fail to get the 2 points, the Chiefs are not incentivized to score at all. They're incentivized to run the clock. They're going to take as much time away and make sure that even if somehow you do get the ball back, you're not going to have any time to do anything with it.
Yep.
If you are tied or in the lead by 1 point at that point, they're going to score. Like, that's what their objective is to score. I don't know. I guess I'm kind of thinking about it from that perspective where, they're going to have that extra down to play with if you're winning by 1, but they also need to, they've got to score. They can't take their time with it. And so maybe you're thinking, well, we might get our time back. But, this is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They know how to score and take time off the clock.
Yeah, the bottom line is your defense is going to have to make a play no matter what. But wouldn't you want to make the play while not losing? Right? Mm-hmm. Stopping the Chiefs, which the Raiders did. The Raiders actually got to stop. It would have worked out if they had just kicked the damn PAT.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate. It's making my head hurt.
This is. I have a lot to say.
Advocating for the devil.
I have quite a bit to say about the coaching display that we're seeing right now. It's the worst probably that I've certainly seen. I obviously haven't seen all of NFL history. This is coaching at its worst in the NFL. It's
bad,
abysmal. And talking about certain guys, we know Matt Rule just got fired. He sucked. That's fine. And Ron Rivera is probably not too far behind. He's not having a great run in DC. But those guys are just not. They're just not coaching well. It's these younger guys, and again, I feel like I'm a boomer, get off my lawn type of here. Mm-hmm. But this is beyond bad coaching. This is disrespect for your position. I'm not going to say disrespect to football because that's obnoxious and grandstanding. But it's disrespectful for your responsibility as the steward of a football franchise. A head coach's job is not to say, look at me and all the fancy stuff I can do. It's to win the game and put your team in the best position to win games. This is not doing that. This is a look at me moment. Zach Taylor calling a damn Philly special on 2nd and goal from the 2 is a look at me moment. Whatever Nat Hackett does anytime during the game is a look at me moment. Brandon Staley going for it on 4th and 2 on his side of the field while up 2 points is look at me moment. You're trying to outsmart football. Yeah, the Browns didn't have any timeouts. You punt the ball back to them, they run themselves to death, and you win. Instead, you put them 5 yards from field goal range. Just because.
I think if that field goal went in, Brandon Staley would have gotten fired on Monday.
I think so, too. If that ball goes through the uprights, and it was pretty close.
Almost did.
Yeah, and if the Browns had picked up 1 first down, that would have been a much better chance of it going through the uprights. I mean, I boil this down to this obsession with looking for the next boy genius, right? Because the 49ers and the Rams both sit slam dunk, as far as I'm concerned, hires with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay in the same season coming into 2017. And so everybody's like, oh, we gotta get me one of those. Well, the problem is the guys they're hiring don't have any experience, right? Kevin Stefanski of the Browns, who I also do not care for, he was a play caller for 1 season. And they're like, oh, yeah, get him. Freaking Matt LaFleur, who has actually done a good job, not throwing Matt LaFleur under the bus. He's not part of this. But he didn't do much to really earn his job.
But he did coach with Washington, like those other 2 guys you mentioned. Yes, he did.
So maybe that was the magic. It was just being on Washington staff with whoever, Jay Gruden and Shanahan at some time in that window. But Nat Hackett got the job purely because he was Aaron Rodgers' drinking buddy. Cliff Kingsbury got the job because he looks spiffy in a turtleneck, I guess. I don't know why he's employed. I mean,
He coached Patrick Mahomes to
A
be
5-5
terrible
record.
at Texas Tech.
he and Sean McVay were buds, I guess. I don't know. It's just Kevin O'Connell for the Vikings. I haven't liked what he's done. He's gotten lucky because their schedule has been cake, but he didn't have much experience calling plays. He's only just like, here's a job because you're young and you're an offensive play caller, so we'll roll with that. These people don't seem to get it. The reason Sean McVay worked was because he's Sean McVay, not because he's a young guy who called plays. The Rams gave him a courtesy interview. They had no interest in hiring him because they're like, there's no way in hell we're hiring a 31-year-old who's called plays for a football team for, 2 or 3 seasons max? They're like, we can't do that. But he is so uniquely gifted that he blew them away in the interview process, and that has conveyed to becoming a very good football coach.
Yeah, if you want to talk about a coach who not a young coach, but a newer coach who's doing a good job, look no further than Brian Daboll. Like how does he have that roster at 4-1? Like he is coaching his ass off, but you look at what he's done. He was the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator for the past 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Before that, I think he was at Alabama briefly, and then he also had a couple other tenures in the NFL. He has been coaching since the 90s.
8 years as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and then additional experience at high-level college. He has built a resume to be where he is. These other guys didn't, but everybody just caught on the magic of Kyle Shanahan, who, by the way, had a ton of experience.
Yes, and was around the sport his whole life because his daddy was a great coach.
Yes, like we can talk about nepotism all we want, but Kyle Shanahan earned his stripes as a play caller. Like he clearly was. This guy should be a head coach, and he will be for as long as he wants to be. Basically, Sean McVay is the exception of an inexperienced guy who can actually pull it off. And I feel like these young guys get hired, and I'll include Josh McDaniels. He got hired as a guy with only a handful of years of experience, and he was so arrogant and so full of himself that
Tim Tebow.
He drafted Tim Tebow. He lands down in Denver and just immediately takes a look at Jay Cutler, which might have been deserved, and says, "Are you kidding me? Get him out of here." But it wasn't just the fact that he did that; it was the way he handled him and Brandon Marshall. It was just like.
And the way that he blew a 6-0 start to the season.
Yes. Even with all the fist bumps.
Yes. They got toasted by the Ravens, and that was it.
Even with all his fist pumps after beating the Patriots, just did 6 of them right before, oh, hey, Bill, shakes hands. He keeps doing more. I'm just like... And then he supposedly was humbled after basically another decade in New England. No, apparently not. He's coming here and he's beclowned himself. I mean, just...
Not to mention backing out of the
Colts job. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, these guys all suck ass, and they do it in such a way that drives me crazy. And something's got to give with the way we get down, with the way we hire coaches. Like the Sean McVay model isn't working because Sean McVay is not meant to be emulated. He's meant to be admired for being so damn good. Just leave him be and just say. This guy's amazing. It's like the guys that take all the 3-pointers because Steph can do it. No, Steph can do it. He's special. You're not. Stop doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Sean McVay, his Rams got annihilated by the Cooper Rush-led Dallas Cowboys on Sunday afternoon. The Rams
Rush only threw the ball 16 times in that game.
Okay, but yeah, what I'm saying is that the Rams aren't any good. They don't have any juice, right? They're
11-point favorites this week.
And Aaron Donald. And that's the end of the
Panthers.
list.
That still sounds high.
Yeah, especially now that Matt Rule isn't there.
Right, exactly.
And that Baker Mayfield's not there.
They might lose again this week. Yeah. So, the Rams, it's, they went all in last year and won. Good for them, but it's 2022 now, and you got to perform, and they're not. Their offensive line is no good. Their defensive line is getting ran over.
Ram over, perhaps.
Oh, jeez.
We got to stop. I'm not making that a title suggestion. I'm sorry, Corey. It doesn't qualify.
Yeah. And Cooper Rush isn't the guy, right? You lost to a backup quarterback because you got ran over and your offense couldn't execute.
Cooper Rush is 5-0 in his career.
Congrats to him, right? We talked about Josh McDaniels being 6-0. I don't see any Hall of Fame busts for him in his future.
Probably not.
So, it's that's fine. But yeah, the Rams stunk it up. Do y'all have anything else to add on this game?
Yeah, I guess I thought that when the Rams got Matt Stafford, they made that trade. I thought that this was a 2-year window. Like, I thought that this year they would have a shot as well. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl last year. But, no, it's just that this team doesn't have it. They don't have enough good players, which is something that's shocking to say about the Rams. The Rams were an all-star team last year, but no Odell. And let's
No
face
Von
it.
Miller either.
Yeah, Von Miller's gone. Odell is gone. But the thing is, last year we were like, okay, coming into the season, they had Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods as probably their top 2 guys. And then Woods gets hurt, and they replace him with Odell, and Odell was more than adequate. Odell was very good for them. Mm-hmm. And then Odell got hurt in the Super Bowl, and the light went off for the Rams offense. Like, they didn't score basically again until that final drive, and that was just Cooper Kupp being Cooper Kupp. Here they said, okay, Odell's still hurt, and we're going to try to replace him with Allen Robinson. Well, Allen Robinson has not worked
sucks.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah, like
It's disappointing because I like Allen Robinson a lot.
Your boy.
And
yeah.
he,
feels kind of washed. He does. He just feels washed.
He does. I mean, like, it was easy to explain away his, issues in Chicago because he hasn't had anybody really to throw him the ball.
Or anybody to block for the guy who's trying to throw him the ball.
But
Or a coach who
like
cares about what he's
those
doing.
excuses are gone now. I get that Stafford is kind of washed himself, but he's a lot better than what you've had the past few years, and he's tied with Cooper Kupp for the most red zone targets on the team and the 10th most in the NFL. And I know fantasy football and real football are not 1-to-1. But you just look at their fantasy outputs, and there's a pretty massive discrepancy considering the similarity in red zone targets that they're getting.
How many touchdowns does Robinson have? Does he have any?
I don't think he has any.
He's
he
like,
might have
he's
one.
like top
he might
10
have
in the
one.
league in red zone targets, and he has no touchdowns?
He might have one. I'd have to go back and check. But yeah,
Oh
it's
my
not.
Therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also with the Rams, I feel like the offensive line has been so bad, and who would have thought that losing a 40-year-old left tackle would have been that big of a deal? But Andrew Whitworth, shout out, Walter Payton Man of the Year winner.
And he's been awesome on Thursday Night Football. He's on the crew with the Prime.
Yeah,
games.
he's there with Fitzpatrick and Sherman.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't
great.
I didn't cook Nat Hackett enough for that coaching disaster as well, but we've already done him in plenty of times. Yeah, like it's just the Rams don't have the offensive line anymore, and Stafford is not the type to, like, he's never been mobile. Like he can move around a little bit, but if he doesn't have a pocket, he's screwed.
Yeah.
Like he's always been, I gotta have a pocket to make this work. And he's also Matt Stafford. He's turnover prone. He's a gunslinger. He throws the ball up for grabs. He points to where he's going to throw picks sometimes. Mm-hmm. And the only way you can really get away with that is if your offense is dynamic enough to overcome turnovers. But when you're getting sacked 6 or 7 times, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Rams, it's I don't think it's their year. Let's see. The New York Jets won 40-17 over the Miami Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is still out with his concussion, and whatever else. I mean, and then Teddy Bridgewater, his backup, came in. He also got hurt in this game. I have no idea the name of the third quarterback that the Dolphins used. Somebody. So yeah, the Dolphins did not beat the Jets. So, I mean, we need to talk about the NFL updating the concussion protocol. I believe they added if a guy is looking wobbly, right? Like, if he hits his head and gets up and can't really stand up, he's fallen over and stuff. He's not allowed to come back in the game. So.
Yeah, basically it's just an additional, check beyond just because clearly whatever the baseline concussion test is that they are giving these players when they first are, flagged as, potentially having suffered a concussion, it must not be catching certain things because Tua supposedly cleared it very quickly and came back for that Buffalo game. And then 4 days later gets concussed again, goes into the fencing posture, right? A very scary moment where his fingers and everything just kind of goes rigid. We run into that situation. So Teddy Bridgewater became the first player to be removed from a game based on the new concussion protocols that have been agreed to by both the NFL and the NFLPA. So he got up from that hit, looked a little bit wobbly, not nearly as much so as Tua did in that Buffalo game, but wasn't quite walking straight. And so even though he also passed the concussion protocol, the initial concussion protocol, the way that Tua did against Buffalo, they ruled him out for the rest of the game, and he's got to go through the same concussion protocol that you normally would if you had failed that first test. So I think Teddy Bridgewater currently is in phase 2 out of 5, and it sounds like Tua is somewhere around the same spot. Tua has officially been ruled out for this weekend. McDaniel said that Bridgewater could potentially be cleared by Sunday, and if he does, that he would probably start. But right now, I think they're planning on having Skylar Thompson make his first career start. He's the one who came in for Bridgewater this past week.
Is McDaniel also on my list of young coaches that I should be hating on?
Quite possibly,
I
but
feel like he might be. Yeah.
Right now, my biggest beef with him is like the way that he's handled the, not just like Tua with the concussion, but like the way that he's spoken about it publicly. But there are some gripes that you could definitely have with him as far as his in-game coaching as well. I think we'll have plenty more opportunities to talk about that as the season goes on because he's had a couple of doozies. Nothing quite as bad as the other coaches we mentioned earlier, but bad.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So coaching is at a very, very low point right now in the NFL.
This is making us look bad for our claim last year that, Madden made people better strategists because this might be like the generation of Madden players that are finally getting their shot and they suck so bad at this.
Yeah. I mean, we will have to see. The Pittsburgh Steelers suffered their most lopsided loss since 1989 when they lost in Buffalo 38-3.
They gave up a 98-yard touchdown pass right out the gate. Right out the gate.
Oh, that was so good.
So that's not great.
And then they muffed a kickoff.
Yeah. My dad is not happy with Mike Tomlin at all, to say the very least.
Does Mike Tomlin deserve a lot of flack for this?
I don't think so. The team's terrible.
I feel like the roster is terrible, and I don't know how much. I mean, I would imagine that Mike Tomlin has some say with that, but he's not the GM.
Mm-hmm.
Like the buck does not stop with him on roster construction.
Yeah, I don't even remember who the GM is. I know my dad told me one time, but yeah. So the Steelers are in a bad way right now, and their schedule is pretty tough. They've got they're hosting the Buccaneers this week. They go at the Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. Then they're at the Eagles the week after that. Like, this
Tua
team
could potentially be back for that Week 7 game.
Yeah. So the Steelers, I mean, they're staring down the barrel of 1-7. So
one of us eliminated them last week. So
yeah, I feel pretty good about it. I told y'all that this might be the worst team in the entire league right now. They're awful.
Yeah.
I also picked the Bills to cover a 2-touchdown line, and they did that plus 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, plus 3 more touchdowns at halftime.
Yep.
Mentioned Matt Rule. He got fired. He's still owed maybe $40 million.
Yeah, I'm a little
Owed
confused
a
about
bunch
some
of
of
this.
this. So
Because he got a
supposedly,
7-year contract.
yeah, they gave him a 7-year
They
contract.
gave him a college contract.
They gave him a 7-year contract.
And how many years has it been? Like 2.5 years?
Yeah, this is his 3rd year.
So he is, I guess, potentially owed $40 million, or maybe that's the guarantee, and he could actually be owed more. Basically, I saw some stuff about how the timing of him being fired so early in the season might be so that he could potentially, fit into the mix for college openings, because that would somehow decrease how much the Panthers owe him. So I don't know if that means that he would then only be owed $40 million, and right now he's actually owed more than that, or if it would come down from $40 million if he gets a college job.
The point is, he's owed. He's being paid multiple millions of dollars
To not
leave.
coach. Yeah, to not
I don't
coach,
know
to leave, to get out of town.
Yeah.
Let's go
Why
away.
would he ever coach again? All right, you buy yourself a lake house, and that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe he really likes it.
You should play Madden then.
No, but then he gets paid more
I-
money. I don't know.
I have trouble understanding people who really like doing things that they're terrible at.
He was a good
Or
college
they like doing
coach.
things that are strenuous.
Like it's one thing
was a
to
good
it's one thing to like enjoy doing something you're terrible at, like within the privacy of like your own private life, but like doing it on a public stage like the NFL, where you got millions upon millions of people watching you every week.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do it.
And us talking about you.
Just making
Imagine
fun
that.
of him and taking pictures of you on ESPN when they decide to use a particularly unflattering photo of you. And yeah, just. I mean, I think he should take the Nebraska job if he's going to take a job. Why not?
Yeah, sure.
Why not? Take that job. He could do it.
Yeah, so best of luck to him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the end of our sort of discussion. Let's get to we're gonna eliminate a team from the playoffs. So your boy cruised in the picks this week.
You crushed.
10-5-1. I don't know what football y'all were looking at. Eric, I believe you went 7-6-1. Does that add up?
Nah, 7. I think I went 7-8-1.
Yeah.
7-8-1. And Corey, you were a game worse than that. 6-10.
It was
Or
unfortunate.
5-10. So just
We can't be 5.
just awful. What is going on? So I will pick first. Eric will pick second, and Corey will pick third. So I have eliminated anyway, let me explain how this works. So each week we pick a team to eliminate from the playoffs. We obviously can't eliminate the same team more than one time, and each week we can't pick the same team as somebody else. So that's why it's important to have won the previous week's picks.
Yep.
So you can choose who to eliminate, and we'll score this at the end of the season. So with my first pick, I was initially thinking Detroit Lions because they're 1-4, but I had to pick another 1-4 team, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are going to be eliminated. They are in 16th place in the AFC right now, and there's only 16 teams in the AFC, so that's not great.
Yeah.
And like I said before, they're staring down the barrel of 1-7 with Tampa Bay, Miami, Philly coming up as their next three. This is less than ideal, unfortunately.
I was hoping you weren't going to go there so that I would get them, but that's that's the right pick, I think.
Yeah. So Eric is up next. He's eliminated Seahawks, Falcons, Bears, Jets, and Steelers last week. And this week, Eric is eliminating.
Yeah, I was a little worried about that Jets kill job because
They're 3-2.
I could make an easy choice here, but I'm going to save that one, stick that one in the back pocket. I'm not going to eliminate the Panthers this week because y'all have already both done that. So
Yeah, you can save them as long as
yeah,
you want.
exactly.
You can save Washington as long as you want to.
That's
You
true.
Yeah.
eliminated them for some reason.
Yep.
Well, because I was the one that was hip to game on the Steelers. You know what y'all were doing, waiting for that. But Okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on the Vegas Raiders. They're done.
The Raiders.
I sniped Corey's pick, apparently.
Yeah, that was my backup. Now I have to go to my backup, which I'm not as keen on eliminating.
Well, it's
right
like
now.
Bailey Zappi. He's been pretty good.
You got to pull out the Bailey Zappi pick. I mean, y'all should have picked the Cardinals, for example. See, that sometimes you got to ride on the lonely island with the Cardinals, who stink.
The Cardinals do stink.
We should have killed Kyler Murray too, but he's not a coach.
Yeah. So I was also kind of thinking about the Lions, Evan.
Just break your heart.
It's gonna break my heart because I like that team. It's a fun team.
Yeah.
They're frisky.
But they're 1-4, and they just got shut out by the Bailey Zappi-led Patriots.
It was a brutal loss.
This is a team that was leading the league in scoring. Yeah, they were also leading the league in points allowed.
Giving up even more points.
But they were leading the league in scoring, and they didn't score a point.
They put up a bagel.
So, yeah, I'm pulling the trigger on the Lions. They were my backup to my backup. So, yeah.
So back up, and back up.
There you go.
I'm not even going to pretend to have understood that.
Corey understands.
I got it.
That was for an audience of one.
Yeah.
Or for anybody out here who watched Blue Mountain State. Alex Mayo, that might be you too. Shout out.
Okay. So you, dear listener, can enter our weekly and season-long picks contest by emailing us at thesportsballers@gmail.com or slide into our Twitter DMs at sportsballers18 with your email address, and we will email out the ballot to you.
Yeah, I mean, we're 5 weeks into the season. It's a little late to beat us in the season-long contest, although if I keep playing the way that I did last week, you might just catch me.
Got a shot.
But you can play against us week by week because we do also shout out the weekly winners.
Yes. Shout out to Sean Dunn, who it says on here got 7 points winning this week's contest, with 7 points rather redundantly. I don't know who typed that. Tied with Eric and ahead of Corey.
Yeah.
Overall standings between the three of us, I've got 43. Corey has 40, and Eric also has 40. And there were 2 ties mixed in there as well.
Yeah, Evan is the only one of us that is plus money at this point.
Yeah. People should listen to me. I don't understand why people don't listen to me more.
We are all still better than the fans in our contest, though.
Yes. James Daly's leading the fans contest. He's got 37. So we will see what happens. The Week 5 Lone Wolf picks. Eric was alone picking the Bills to cover the 14. If you had Bills minus 36, you would have lost on that one.
I don't know if anybody offered that alternate line. You might have been able to get 21, but no.
Yeah. And then I was alone picking the Texans to beat the 7 points against Jacksonville. Texans were 7-point underdogs, and they won by 7. Yeah. And I was also alone picking the Cardinals to cover the 5.5. They were underdogs at home against the Eagles. I absolutely nailed this game.
You did.
I told y'all, but y'all don't listen to me. The Eagles are going to jump out to a big lead.
They did.
And then the Cardinals are going to do something crazy and come back and get it close.
They did.
And then blow it late.
They did.
And that is exactly what happened. Their kicker, with very little time left, it was 20-17 Eagles, and the Cardinals were kicking to try to tie, and he went full shankopotamus again after the broadcast showed a montage of him shanking a bunch of kicks in pregame warmups.
Well, plus he's also the same kicker that the Chiefs initially brought in to replace Harrison Butker when he got hurt, and he missed a bunch of kicks to cost them against the Colts. And so then the Cardinals say, hey, let's go get that guy to replace our injured kicker, and he shanked a bunch of kicks. Also, again, got to kill Kyler Murray. Slid on 2nd and 1, short of the sticks, or it was first down. Hold on, it was 2nd down. He slid short of the sticks to make it 3rd and 1, and then got up and clocked the ball, forcing the Cardinals to kick the ball, when they still had time on the clock to potentially score a touchdown and maybe even take the lead. And then they missed the kick and lost.
That's a coaching thing, yes, me. Right? Like during the week,
It's a coaching
you tell
thing.
Kyler to make sure you slide far enough when it's crunch time. And then it's a coaching thing like, hey, it's third down, not first down. We can't spike the ball in this situation.
I agree it's a coaching thing, but the quarterback should also know better
Oh,
without
certainly.
being
Yeah.
told. And, this is probably an unfair thing that we're going to do all year. But anytime Kyler Murray does something that's not very football IQ-esque, he is going to get ringed for it because, well, he had a friggin' homework clause in his contract initially and apparently can't win during double XP weekends. So,
I mean,
Just
the new
saying.
Call of Duty comes out October 28th. So,
that's going to be a problem. They might not win a game.
yeah. Yeah,
just
they
trying
might
to win
not
a game.
anymore after that. Yeah, so is that all of our best and worst of week 5 from Football Outsiders quick reads? The best quarterback was Josh Allen, no surprise there. The worst quarterback was Matt Ryan, also no surprise. That game was an abomination.
But
and
Matt
set
Ryan's team
football
won.
back.
Yeah, the Colts won that game though.
Oh right, they did win.
Because Nat
You know
Hackett,
who lost? The American people lost, right? Who had to watch that on television. Or on-
Nat Hackett, shout out, decides to
Yeah.
go for a touchdown in a game where no touchdowns were scored and you were up by 3. You could have just kicked a field goal. I mean, a 6-point lead is insurmountable in that situation. There's no way in hell Matt Ryan was going to lead them down the field to score a touchdown. And this clown says, "Hey, let me trust my quarterback, who is Mr. Very Limited," and he throws a pick in the end zone.
$200 million.
Richard Sherman was so triggered.
Richard Sherman had a meltdown. I'm surprised
PTSD flashbacks.
he didn't drop any F-bombs and get
Live on
fired.
TV. Live on TV. I mean, he does a pretty good job not doing that. He didn't cuss during his rants after he made the Crabtree play,
Yeah, no, he didn't.
but he was
yeah.
clearly worked up, like almost to agree. This time he's wearing a suit. Like,
Yeah.
how are you this mad? I was like, oh, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, cost him a very expensive ring. Running backs, Derrick Henry was the best in total, and Josh Jacobs was the best in rushing only. Mark Ingram was the worst in both.
This is kind of crazy because, like, Derrick Henry being the best in total means that he needed, but not the best in rushing means that he needed some receiving DYAR to
outperformed
boost
Josh
him.
Jacobs at the very least in receiving. Yeah.
This is new
is
for
insane.
him this year. Like, he's actually getting a lot of targets in the passing game this year.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Also, shout out to Josh Jacobs, who we all crushed in our fantasy.
Yes, we did.
He's been amazing for the past 2 weeks at least.
Like, we all said, no, don't draft that guy. He sucks. And, he's been great.
He has back-to-back 30-point games in fantasy.
Jeez. All right. Well, maybe that's why
Both
people
of
don't
them on
listen to-
Rashonda's bench. R.I.P. to her team.
I had Gabe Davis on one of my benches.
Drew had Gabe Davis and
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett.
And Hayden Hurst.
On his
Hayden
bench.
Hurst scored 13.6 points, which was 14.1 more than the guy he started. Because Tyler Conklin, the only fantasy production he had was a 5-yard penalty that cost him half a point.
5-yard penalty. Not even a play of football.
And that cost him the game. That penalty cost him the.
What was the penalty? Like a false start?
I think it was a false
start,
start.
yeah.
It was a 5-yarder, so I think it was a
Oh
false
my
start.
God.
He lost the game on a false start. After he left like 50 receiving points on his bench. He's never going to play fantasy football again. He's going to
It
quit.
is brutal.
That's just impossibly bad.
Yes. Alrighty, so don't play fantasy football with us.
Yeah. Best receivers was Justin Jefferson, and the worst was Zay Jones. So
Yes. What
I
team
would-
is Zay Jones on? Is he on the Bills? The Jaguars?
I don't think he's on the
Bears.
Bills
He's with
anymore.
the Jags,
I think he might be
yeah.
with the Jags.
Which makes sense because the Jags' passing game was booty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be remiss to not mention the true best position player of the week in DYAR. One Mr.
Mr.
Not
Useless.
So Useless, Taysom Hill. The problem is he's not qualified this week because he didn't rush enough to qualify for running back status. He didn't catch enough passes to qualify for tight end status. And he didn't throw enough passes to qualify for quarterback status.
He broke the Football Outsiders scale.
Yeah, but he had the most DYAR because he kicked ass in all 3 categories for the very brief time that he was doing them. And, oh, by the way, was a big part of the reason why the Saints won the game.
I think he's projected to score like 0.71 points this week in our fantasy league, but Anthony has him in his lineup as a second tight end.
Yeah, just take a shot
Why
downfield,
not?
man. Might work out. Maybe you should just make him the first tight end and trade the whoever he's got.
He's got Zach Ertz. He's been really good this year.
Yes.
Told y'all you should have drafted Dallas Goedert.
He's
No,
also
he's not a
been good
tier
this
1
year.
tight end. What are you talking about?
He's
Dallas
not.
Goedert.
He's a tier 2 tight end, which is still pretty good.
He's not tier 1. Let's chill.
Yeah.
Travis Kelce
Tier
is
1
Evan.
is Travis Kelce
Travis
and
Kelce.
Mark Andrews.
God.
Travis Kelce, Evan.
And Mark Andrews.
Travis Kelce.
End of list.
Okay.
Travis Kelce.
Anyway, let's get to the picks. Mercifully, the Lions, Texans, Raiders, and Titans are all on bye.
That's a good buy.
that
team.
is-
Yeah,
yeah.
those, no, I don't want to watch any of those
The
teams.
Titans are the only one of those teams that's really worth watching right now. I mean,
They're in first place.
maybe
Yeah,
the
in that
Lions,
awful division,
kind
that
of.
makes sense.
Not really.
So this first game, Thursday Night Football, Commanders and Bears. When y'all make your pick, I need you to only say one word so we can move on. I've got Bears. Corey.
Commanders.
Ooh. Eric.
Commandos.
Already. On to Sunday, 1 o'clock, 49ers at Falcons. Niners are favored by 5.5. I have got the San Francisco 49ers, who are absolutely rolling. Somehow, Jimmy G, though he sucks, kind of fits. Like, it's weird. He sucks, but is somehow effective. The 49ers defense is ferocious. And the Falcons don't have a good offense or defense. So, and there's going to be plenty of 49ers fans at this game because 49ers fans are everywhere. And there's always empty seats at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, even though it's beautiful. And the food is affordable. So give me the Niners. Eric, we'll start with you this time.
Well, last week I actually cashed in by picking the Falcons to cover the 9-point line against the Bucks.
The Falcons are 5-0 against the spread this season.
So you're betting against the trend, man. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. But the reason I did that was because I thought the Bucks, despite the fact that I do think the Bucks are a good team. They're kind of still, working out some things.
Yeah.
Whereas the 49ers, now that Jimmy G has returned, which sounds just ridiculous, but it's true. Now that he's back in the lineup and actually seemingly has that role locked down, they look good. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't look good, but everybody else around him has made him look good basically since he
George
got there.
Kittle did something.
Yeah, I mean,
He's got a good rapport with those players around him. He knows how to get them the ball in the regular season at the very least.
again, the regular season, he can go into a matchup and not necessarily have to have any type of significant performance. He could just say, hey, I flipped the ball to Debo, it almost got picked off, and then he ran 80 yards for a touchdown.
Right.
Whereas in the playoffs, at some point, no, you actually have to make a play. Not give the ball to him and make him. No, you got to do something, and that's when he wilts. But the Falcons have no ability to pressure Jimmy G into making him wilt. He could continue to just flip the ball to his great playmakers all he wants. Kyle Shanahan can continue to just coach his ass off and do what he does. Their defense is going to demolish this team. I'm taking the 49ers.
Before I make my pick, breaking news for those listening live, the Braves tied the NLDS with a 3-0 victory over the Phillies.
Oh, really?
Yep. So
Okay.
that series is now tied 1-1. I am also going to take the 49ers in this game. The Falcons intrigue me. I think Marcus Mariota is a decent quarterback. He's a lot better than he was early in his career, but he's still not great. I would feel a little more confident in taking the Falcons to remain unbeaten against the spread if Kyle Pitts was actually being kept involved. I think he's had one really good game this season. If Drake London was staying involved, he had some good games early, but he's had back-to-back duds where he's just completely disappeared. So I don't really trust their offense to put up a lot of points, and their defense is not going to be able to stop Debo and this offensive attack. I mean, Jeff Wilson has been looking pretty good too. So yeah, I'm also taking the 49ers, making it a clean sweep.
All right, we're all on the Niners. The next game, Patriots at Browns. Browns are favored by 2.5 points. I picked the Browns just because they're at home, and I feel like the Browns have a better 53 than the Patriots do. I feel like the Bill Belichick revenge game narrative is overrated. That was
It's been a long
30
time.
years ago now.
It wasn't even the
It's a
same
little
franchise.
long to be holding a grudge.
It's not even the same franchise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it technically is, isn't it?
Technically, it is
Right,
because
but-
they kept their history, but it's
But the guys that fired him worked for the now Ravens.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's overblown. I think the Browns, I mean, Nick Chubb's having a good year. The Browns can run the ball. So, give me the Browns. 1-0.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
whoever, just jump in.
The Browns can run the ball. So can the Patriots. Ramondre Stevenson has been good. Damian Harris, I think right now is doubtful to be back for this week. He left early with, I think it was a hamstring injury this past week. That was a big part of why my game was as close as it was, because I should have beaten Drew by a lot more considering he left so many points on his bench. But I also Bailey Zappi has looked pretty solid. And Jacoby Myers seems to have a really good rapport with him. Like the two of them have been connecting really nicely. I have question marks everywhere else with the Patriots, though. And honestly, even those two, Bailey Zappi to Jacoby Myers, I'm not ready to.
That's
to
not
to
Tom
hang
Brady
my-
to Randy Moss.
Yeah, I'm not ready to hang my picks on their backs.
Not exactly Steve Young to Jerry Rice, huh?
I like what Nick Chubb is doing this year. He's been fantastic. The best running back in football so far this season, in my opinion. I think that Jacoby Brissett has been solid, and their defense is okay. I am also going to take the Browns.
Yeah,
Mild reservations, but
I'm taking the Browns too. This line indicates that the Browns are slightly worse than the Patriots. I don't know if I believe that. I think that they've got, like Evan said, I think a better 53. Certainly not a better coach, but whatever. I do have to say though, we talked a little Ewing theory about Dak and Cooper Rush. Well, Mac Jones is being outperformed by his backup's backup. Just saying.
Michael McCorkle
Just
has
saying.
to be on the bench.
Just saying. Maybe the reason why he looked like he was like crying when he was hurt wasn't just because of the pain. He was like, I'm about to lose my job. And he just knew it. And, he's about to get Wally
To
pipped.
Bailey Zappi. Yeah. All right. You said the Browns as well.
Yes, I did.
Jets, Packers. The Packers are favored by 7.5 points. I am picking the New York Football Jets because I feel like the Jets have good vibes right now, which is different for them. And I feel like the Packers, I mean, that had to have been a long flight back to Wisconsin after they lost to the Giants in London this past Sunday, right? Like there's...
it
gotta be
literally
fun.
was a very long flight back. But
yes, but long as well in the sense that we just blew this game. So, the Packers can't stop the run, and their offense isn't nearly as effective. So give me the Jets. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm also on the Jets here. 7.5 is too much for me. I get that, like, all this really indicates that the Packers are 4.5 points better than the Jets, but honestly, I think that's too much. The Packers are too inconsistent. Their passing game is inconsistent. Their running game is inconsistent. Aaron Jones, really good, but week to week, you don't really know what you're going to get. Same thing with A.J. Dillon. Romeo Dobbs, you never know what you're going to get. The rest of the receiving core is inconsistent.
Lazard.
Their defense has been inconsistent. Their offensive line has been pretty bad. I mean, I get that they have David Bakhtiari back now, but it's still not very good. I'm taking the Jets too.
So if we were actually betting real money, obviously we wouldn't pick all the games to bet on, but I would have been feasting by fading the Packers because they've had some ridiculous spreads this year. Like they were favored on the road at Minnesota. That didn't make any sense. I think we all picked the Vikings and cashed in there.
We did.
They were big-time favorites, 9.5-point favorites against the Patriots, and that game went to friggin' overtime. Now, I believe I had that. And then last week, they were probably, 8.5-point favorites in London over the Giants, and I was like, after what I saw against the Patriots, no way. There's no way in hell I'm picking the Packers to cover that line against the Giants.
Corey
and they lost the game.
Corey, you picked the Packers last week.
That was one of, that explains why Corey had a bad week.
Losing.
Because I didn't have a good week either, but I knew better than that. Give me the Jets. Like, the Packers have not earned being a touchdown plus favorite over anybody.
No.
Especially not a team that's actually kind of frisky like the Jets.
Yeah, exactly. Jaguars at Colts. This game is made for Thursday Night Football as well. Colts favored by 1.5 points. I honestly feel like the wrong team is favored here. I am all over the Jaguars. The Colts are terrible. They can't do anything. They have nothing. There's nobody home. The Jaguars slightly less terrible. So I would pick them to win outright here. So getting 1.5 points, sign me up for that.
Yeah, I mean, the line does indicate that the Jaguars are better than the Colts, which I agree with. They played in week 1. This was the game that was a tie, wasn't it?
No.
The Jaguars beat them 24-0.
The snot out of them.
Yeah. I mean, like, that was a 24-0 game, and I'm, not much has changed here.
Mm-mm.
Changing the venue is not going to make that big of a difference. Yeah, give me the Jags.
I mean, I think I get why this line is so weird because the Jags have looked pretty terrible the last couple of weeks. I mean, they blew that lead against the Eagles. They looked atrocious. Trevor Lawrence, who I claimed was him, is not looking like him right now. But that being said, the Colts are absolute cheeks, and the Jaguars already beat the crap out of them once. That was only a few weeks ago. Yeah, I'm not changing course. Jaguars take this one.
Yeah. If Troy Aikman was on this podcast, he might say Trevor Lawrence is her.
Jeez.
Yes.
Vikings at Dolphins.
I'm just saying, I'm not letting Troy Aikman off the hook for that. That was
lame.
That was a very sexist comment.
Yeah,
Take off the dresses. Come on, Troy.
Yeah, we should be better than that.
It's 2022.
Yeah, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Vikings at Dolphins. I've got the Vikings just because the Dolphins' quarterback situation is so up in the air. And this game's at 1 o'clock, so we don't need to worry about Kirk Cousins turning into a pumpkin on national TV. So give me the Vikings. The Dolphins. If you have no quarterback, you got nothing.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too, with Tua confirmed to be out, and even if Teddy Bridgewater is cleared in time to play, it's unfair to say that he can't play this year, but he hasn't shown me any indication that he's any good right now. So,
how many horrible injuries does he need to have to not go out there anymore? Right? This is at least 2 concussions. He had the knee. Didn't he break his leg?
I like Teddy so much. Like, he's such a good dude, such a cool player to follow and watch, but just terrible luck. But yeah, I'm taking the Vikings here.
Yeah, wobbly Teddy Bridgewater is not anybody I would trust. That's if he even plays. The Vikings are not good, in my opinion. I think their 4-1 is a little bit of fool's gold. But the Dolphins are not in a state to beat a team that I think is pretty competitive. And 3.5 on the road seems like a lot, but when you consider the Dolphins' health situation, it's a no-brainer to me. I'm taking the Vikings.
Okay. On to the next game. Bengals minus Saints, or Bengals at Saints, where the Bengals are favored by 2 points in the Dome. This was the hardest one for me, I think. Or maybe not the hardest one, but one of the hardest ones for me. I picked the Saints in the points. Just, the Saints at home, they're tough to beat, and getting points. The Bengals have probably been, I don't know. Maybe the Bengals have been playing better. Have they?
Not really.
No, I don't know. Give me the Saints and the points. Maybe be loud in there, and Burrow's going to have some issues.
Andy Dalton revenge game.
Oh, that's true.
Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Well, as somebody who watched the Bengals play in the Superdome 8 years ago, I was there. I watched Andy Dalton convert like 12 third downs. Just, oh my God. The PA announcer, every time it's third down, the crowd get all fired up, and I'm just like, completion. Rob Ryan decided on 3rd and 18 that he was going to have, I forget what ill-equipped cornerback to have A.J. Green covered in single. And A.J. Green just ran right by him, and Dalton flipped the ball up, and it was a 25-yard completion.
Seen that before.
Oh, my God. But anyway, different story this time. The Bengals, I feel like, Bengals are still getting extra value because they went to the Super Bowl or something. Who cares? Like, we all know that run was a little bit fluky, as it was. And Burrow doesn't look as good this year. The offensive line that was supposed to be retooled and better absolutely stinks. And, oh, by the way, Zach Taylor is right up there with the worst coaches in football. He is among these younger coaches that I was just furious with an hour ago and still am. He sucks. Dennis Allen, I don't know if he can coach, but I like it better than Zach Taylor. There's no way I'm picking the Bengals to cover as favorites in the Superdome. I don't get that line. I don't.
Yeah, Zach Taylor is the only reason I'm not taking the Bengals here, because I don't trust Zach Taylor to get his guys to put together a game plan to stop Taysom Hill. Like, Taysom Hill does not have big games back to back. Like, that doesn't happen.
Put together a game plan to stop Taysom Hill.
He's not good enough. He's not good enough to put together back-to-back games. But you know what? Against this team, coached by Zach Taylor, I don't see why Taysom Hill can't have another big day. And if he does, then the Saints aren't going to lose by 2 or more than that. So, yeah, give me the Saints.
Alrighty.
We have all made the same picks for like the last 7
Everything
games.
except for tomorrow.
Except
night.
for the crappy game
now
that
we
nobody
have to
wants
watch tomorrow night.
I'm not watching, just on principle.
I didn't watch this weekend. I felt so much better than everybody else because I was like, I'm not watching that crap.
I watched the whole thing. I'm like, well, I'm invested now. Like,
Nah, sunk cost fallacy, dude. Just turn the TV off.
That's true.
You watch something else.
Let's see. An interesting game that didn't look like it would be as interesting when the schedule came out. Ravens at Giants, and the Ravens are favored by 6 points. I have bought a Amtrak ticket and a ticket to the ball game on Sunday, so I will be up in the upper deck, cheering on the Ravens. But for the purposes of this contest, I am picking the New York Giants and the 6 points because the Ravens just don't blow people out. I guess, except for the last time they played on this field against the Jets back in week 1. The Ravens haven't been. I know they're capable of playing better. I know it, but they haven't done it. Lamar's missing wide open people. People keep getting injured. They can't stop the run on defense. They can't run the ball on offense themselves. Like, I know this team has more talent than what they've shown, and it's frustrating. So, give me the Giants and the 6.
Yeah,
and the Giants have been playing well.
Yeah, that's where I am. The Ravens are banged up. Their offense is
Saquon Barkley.
Their offense is underperforming, and I just brought up Brian Dable not that long ago, and the job that he is doing coaching that team, getting the absolute most out of a really weak roster. I don't care that this team is 4-1. This is a bad team on paper. These are bad players that are somehow playing cohesive football and doing a pretty bang-up job of it. I don't think they're going to win this game, but 6 points feels like too much as the home team. So I am also taking the Giants and the 6 points.
Yeah, we talk about coach of the year a lot, where it's pretty much coach of the team that wins more games than we thought they would. But this actually feels like, Daboll's obviously the front runner early in the season. This feels like the most earned coach of the year if he ends up winning it, because it truly is a matter of this team is terrible and that they have a good record, and it's pretty much because this guy is here versus whoever they had last year. I mean, who was the Giants coach last year? It was Joe Judge.
Yeah,
oh
Joe
my gosh.
Oh, right. Yes, him.
Chased back to New England with
Joe
his tail
Fudge
between his legs.
And Jason Garrett got chased onto the NBC set.
Yes.
So, yeah, again, the Ravens, you guys all said it. They've been playing below what I think their level is. 6 points is a lot, especially as a road favorite. Like, that, oof. Like, the Ravens got lucky to win against the Bengals. That was a home game.
A squeaker.
It was a squeaker, and it was a Zach Taylor special. They, really helped them squeak that one out. There's no way I'm picking them to cover that line. That's nuts.
I mean, the Ravens couldn't hold on to a 21-point lead in the fourth quarter against the Dolphins. Like, just complete.
Yep.
Unbelievable. I think we're probably going to disagree on this next one. Buccaneers at Steelers. Buccaneers favored by 8.5 points. This was the hardest one for me. I wrote Buccaneers, scratched it out. I have Steelers on here now. Give me the Steelers at home. But the Steelers are not going to win. I will say that. They're not going to win. But 8.5 seems like too many points on the road for a 45-year-old quarterback-led team that has a bad offensive line, a bad interior offensive line. So is Cam Hayward healthy? I haven't heard about him too much this season.
This is one where I kind of hate that there's a hook, because I'd rather just be able to hope that this goes to a push, because I don't like the idea of picking either of these teams. Like, the Buccaneers still have some issues that they're working out. We talked about that earlier. The Steelers look awful.
They have no shortage of issues.
Can the Buccaneers do what the Bills did this past week? In my opinion, no, they can't. But the Bills beat them by 35 points. The Buccaneers are only favored by 8.5. I'm going to take the Bucs.
Yeah, the Steelers, I will say it again. I firmly believe this. I think the Steelers are the worst team in the league. And while the Bucs haven't been great, they do have their offense back. And
Lenny Fournette looked really good
Lenny
this past
Fournette
week.
looked good. Mike Evans playing well.
He's not suspended.
Yeah, Chris Godwin is healthy. Tom Brady is actually top 5 in DYAR this year. I was surprised.
He's playing well.
Because he had a pretty bad start by that metric, at least when the dudes were hurt. But he's been cooking the last few weeks.
He's also top 5 in groins attempted to kick.
Yes, and tied for top 1, I guess, in ridiculous roughing the passer penalties. Tied with Derek Carr, apparently, among others. But yeah, Buccaneers 8.5. I know it's a lot. I know that the Bucs probably, I don't know. It feels like maybe people are coming around on the fact that the Steelers are terrible, which they should, because the Steelers are really bad. I mean, it's really impressive how, like, T.J. Watt is obviously a terrific player, but the Steelers' defense as a whole was good. But then this guy goes out and they can't do anything. Like, they offered zero resistance in stopping the Bills, which, again, the Bills, but they also haven't looked good against anybody. Like, they're just a top to bottom bad team right now.
Yeah.
They barely beat the Bengals, who turned the ball over 5 times.
Yeah, they needed the fact that their kicker couldn't, or their long snapper was hurt. That's why they missed the PAT.
Yep. So you're taking the Bucs?
Yes, Bucs.
All right. On to the 4 o'clock games. Carolina Panthers at Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are favored by 11. This is ridiculous to me. The Rams didn't even score 11 points this past week. They only scored 10. So why and the Panthers just fired their coach. So Georgia Tech, we talked about Georgia Tech winning 2 games in a row. these are the 2 games since the head coach got fired. So the Panthers just fired their coach. They're obviously they can't be much worse than they have been, right? Like whoever's the interim coach, I think it's Steve Wilkes.
Yeah, it's Steve Wilkes.
That's got to be an upgrade.
Which isn't great.
Steve Wilkes was horrible.
He was a
one
one
year.
and done. Yeah.
Coaching the Rosen one in Arizona, but like the Panthers can't possibly be as bad as we've seen. And the Rams, despite them being defending Super Bowl champions, they're not it this year. It's just they're just not. So the Rams are going to win by 12. Are you kidding me? Give me the Panthers. An easy one, in my opinion.
Yeah. For all the things that Evan just said, I am also taking the Panthers.
This line feels like an overreaction to the fact that I don't think it's about Matt Rule. I think it's about Baker Mayfield not being out there. He's going to miss 2 to 6 weeks with an ankle sprain, I think.
Ooh.
And I think Sam Darnold still isn't back from whatever the hell was wrong with him this time. But
I didn't even know he was hurt. What
I
happened
didn't
to him?
either, honestly.
yeah.
But I don't think it would have changed my mind about this.
Are they starting P.J. Walker?
Probably.
Maybe.
What happened to
Assuming
Matt
he's still-
Corral? Why don't they give
I don't
him
know.
some playing time?
Or maybe they are starting him.
I thought they were starting P.J. Walker. Either way, like it feels like Vegas didn't really know what to do with this line because of the quarterback situation, and that feels like an opportunity to take advantage of a pretty generous line here. I'm going to take the 11 points. Not a whole lot of hesitation. The Rams are bad. Like I don't think they're making the playoffs.
PJ Walker is slated to start currently, so yeah.
Is Matt Corral even on their roster?
Yeah, like they picked him.
I imagine he's still on their roster.
But
But
how many quarterbacks have they kept then? Because they got P.J. Walker and Sam Darnold.
right. Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Another, I don't know, type of games. Seahawks hosting the Cardinals. Cardinals favored by 2.5 points. I pick Seattle.
They're going up against
It's going to be
Lonely Island.
loud in there. And, like, again, the Cardinals only play close games. They either get way ahead or fall way behind, and then something weird happens. Kyler does something crazy, either crazy good or crazy stupid, and, the Cardinals will, maybe lose close. They're going to go full Shankopotamus or something. Something, I mean, we know the Seahawks never play normal games, or whatever the tweet was. It's going to be Seattle and the points. Mariners have a home playoff game that day as well. This game got moved back, I think 90 minutes or something. It's starting at a weird time now.
The wrong team is favored here. And unlike with the Jaguars-Colts game, this one is really egregious because the team that is favored is on the road, so there's no excuse for it. The Seahawks have the better quarterback as of right now, as far as what we've seen this season. Geno Smith has been really good, and
my
Kyler
fantasy
Murray
team.
has been really not.
Yeah.
Tyler Lockett looks good, DK Metcalf looks good, and Geno is targeting both of them and has a great rapport with them. Kenneth Walker looked really good, so them missing Rashad Penny doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. The defense has been adequate. At times, at least, when they're not playing against the Lions and
Or
giving
Taysom
up
Hill.
45 points
Or
for Taysom
Taysom
Hill. The Cardinals are just bad, and they've got a bad coach. And
boy.
I don't think that Pete Carroll is some great coach, but he's a lot better than Cliff Kingsbury. This is probably the easiest pick that I will make all season.
Is
Taking the
Kingsbury
Seahawks.
the worst coach in the league now that Matt Rule's been fired?
Well,
Was
no, because we still
Kingsbury
got
number
Hackett.
31?
We still got Hackett,
got Hackett.
Hackett.
but Kingsbury is now outside of the top 30 again, where
Well,
he
no,
belongs.
that was only 31 guys.
Where he belongs.
Yeah, we're willing to give Steve Wilkes enough credit to not put him below Kingsbury, even though Kingsbury replaced Wilkes. He shouldn't have replaced Wilkes. he should have stayed on USC's staff. It's ridiculous that he was hired.
As their offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
He should have been locked in a small closet where there are no oblong balls of any kind.
Absolutely.
So, all right. The Cardinals are not good, and this line indicates that they are. Like, the Seahawks have been frisky this year. I mean, I picked them
they've arguably been better than Frisky. They've actually been pretty good.
Pretty good, you know. That's a scary thought because I think I eliminated them already.
I did too. I think.
Yeah.
No, Eric, you eliminated
Evan
them
has
first.
Not. Yeah, Eric eliminated them first. Evan has not yet eliminated them, and neither have I.
Well, Corey eliminated the Giants first.
4-1.
The 4-1 New York Football Giants.
So this is not going very good. Not very good. Anyway, this line sucks. Seahawks. I feel like Pete Carroll is, kind of. I'm getting some vibes that he's really into this season just because Russ is gone, and so it's like he's got some motivation, he's got more pep in his step because the weight of expectations when you've got a guy that everybody thinks is good, it means that because we saw it, we talked about it repeatedly over the last few years. It's like everybody associated Russell Wilson with being one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the entire sport, and so they said, okay, Russell Wilson is here and y'all ain't winning, so it's got to be your fault, old guy. And now Pete can look at it and say, no, it wasn't all on me. It was partially on Mr. Unlimited or whatever clown name he came up with for himself.
No, it's Mr. Unlimited.
Mr. Incredibly Limited.
Yeah, Broncos Country. Let's punt. Come on. Give me a break, man. Seahawks are cooking a little bit. The Cardinals are still a rudderless ship. They still have no DeAndre Hopkins. So, yeah, sorry. No, picking Seahawks. Taking the points. At home. That's insane.
All right. Let's see. What game is even next? So in college football, when the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams play each other late in the season, oftentimes it's described as the game of the century. Even though they've only been playing football for 1.5 centuries, and there's been at least 10 games of the century. With that said, in the NFL this season, this game might be the game of the century. Bills -3 at Chiefs. This is a rematch from the absolute barn burner, an instant classic, a real
heartbreak. For
a heartbreaker
anybody
for Bills
who
fans.
likes the Bills.
Yeah,
and I do.
And you
I
think
like
the Bills fans haven't had enough heartbreak, right?
At least this one wasn't in the Super Bowl, I guess.
Yeah. Oh my God. So yeah, the Bills at the Chiefs. This is going to be a good one, and this is going to be an oversight on my part. Guess who's going to be traveling late Sunday afternoon and Sunday night?
Yeah, coming back
home
from the Meadowlands.
Yeah, me. So, oh boy. Yeah. So after saying all that stuff, I've got the Chiefs and the points. You mean to tell me this Kansas City offense is getting points just for free? Thank you. We know the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl, but and we know nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. That said, when are they going to get to play the Chiefs in Buffalo? When is that going to happen?
Well, I've got an answer for you right here. They'll get a chance to play the Chiefs in Buffalo after they beat the Chiefs this week and they secure home field advantage because that's how they have to do so. 3 points is a lot of points for a road team going into Arrowhead. That sounds blasphemous, to be honest. But the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. And the way they're going to win the Super Bowl is by winning this game. So the next time when they play them in January, potentially, it won't be in Kansas City again.
All right, so you've got the Bills straight up. Are you taking them to cover the spread?
Well, yeah. Absolutely. Again, I agree the line's kind of wacky, but at the same time, the Chiefs' offense has been spotty this year. Like the idea that they've been cooking and firing all cylinders. They smoked the Cardinals. They smoked the Cardinals week 1. Okay, who cares? Then they looked pretty bad against the Chargers for most of that game. They were gifted a pick 6 by ridiculously bad coaching again. Thank you, Brandon Staley, for that. And then in week 3, they were terrible against the Colts. They actually lost that game somehow. Week 4, they smoked the Bucs, but we talked about that a little bit, where the Bucs were, they were in flux all week. And then this week, they looked bad for a big chunk of the game against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They're not firing on all cylinders like a 4-1 record would indicate. Whereas the Bills, they might make some mistakes, but they're still putting up 38 points, 45 points on you. And the Chiefs' defense is not good, right? So I'll take the Bills to cover this line. I mean, this line indicates that whoever said it, which is Vegas, thinks that the Bills are a much better team than the Chiefs. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I am taking the Chiefs and the points at home. The Bills demolished the Rams in week 1, but we've all agreed that the Rams are not it. They demolished the Titans in week 2 before Derrick Henry learned how to catch the football and before the Titans remembered that Derrick Henry is really good on the ground. They lost to Tua Tagovailoa, who couldn't walk straight in week 3. They beat the Ravens by 3 points, this exact spread, on the road in week 4, and the Chiefs are playing better than the Ravens. Again. The Chiefs are playing better than the Ravens at this point in the season. And then the Bills demolished the Steelers, who Eric eliminated last week because they're the worst team in football. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you want to talk about how the Chiefs haven't really had a statement win this year. Where is the Bills' statement win this year? Because I'm not seeing it either, to be perfectly honest. And again, the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. And nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. We know this.
I would say the Ravens win is a statement win. The Ravens are going to win that division. What are we talking about? That's a statement victory.
Fine. But they won that game by 3. And the Chiefs are better than the Ravens right now.
Maybe.
So I'm going to take the Chiefs and the points when they're playing at home against the Bills here. I mean, what is really all that different from last year in the playoffs?
Tyreek Hill's not there, and Tyreek Hill was the best player in that game.
Okay, touche.
Yeah, like you walked right into that one. I mean, look, and the thing is, I agree this line is nuts, but you know, it's small enough for me to say if the Bills are going to win, that I'm not willing to try to split that margin. You know. Also, this line moved because this was at 2 at the start of the week, and I was like, 2 points? That's a lot. And they added one more. I'm like, people must really think the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, I know I do, but geez, man. Like, I agree. It's a crazy line, but I'm willing to go out on a limb this week. I'm willing to take my chance.
I pulled up the Bills' schedule. They're going by in week 7, but in week 8, Sunday Night Football, they host the Green Bay Packers.
I feel like they're going to waffle them.
Yeah, probably. And then a game I was complaining about in week 12 on Thanksgiving Day at Detroit Lions, which Thanksgiving dinner is going to be delayed because this game's going to be a barn burner. This might be 50-49 at
if
half.
the Lions can remember how to score again.
Yeah, they just got shut out by the Patriots. Maybe the Lions are just on a hot streak. The Bills are for real. I don't think the Lions' offense is for real.
Oh, well.
Not like that.
I've got some questions after this past week. That's for
How
sure.
can you not?
I mean,
that was
it's
really
about
bad.
a month from now.
That was
So,
really bad.
we'll see. On to the next game, Sunday Night Football. Let's see, where are we? Sunday Night Football, Cowboys at Eagles. I know this was a game I was complaining about in the preseason and in the offseason. Just because the Cowboys are so consistently overrated and the Eagles are going to be garbage, so I thought. And I was wrong about that. The Eagles are incredible, and Dallas is rolling. The Ewing Theory Committee. Has the Ewing Theory Committee convened? Have they sent up the white smoke?
Well, I think there's been so many possible examples of it that they're waiting to make sure that they gather all of the options for them to discuss and rule on.
I think the Rams' victory would have been enough to get them to actually attend this game in person, except for the fact that Cooper Rush was not very good against the Rams. He pretty much was just a non-factor, and the Cowboys' defense and running game kind of took over. So they're kind of like – plus they've got some options that we kind of talked about, like Mac Jones, who is much more intriguing because he's not being paid a whole bunch of money. Yeah. So he's much easier to just move on from than Dak Prescott. But anyway, we should actually talk about the game,
Yeah.
we?
So
Yeah,
the game
we're at
that
3
is
hours,
scheduled
so-
to happen.
Yeah, 3 hours and I'm hungry. So
Oh, right. Yeah. Let me.
And
stop
I'm already
yammering.
sleeping way too late these days.
Okay. Eagles are favored by 6 points at home. I am taking the points and the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys' defense has been playing pretty well from the little bit of it I have seen. Now, I have been grinding the tape with Hugh Jackson, but I think this game is going to be closer than 7. I think the Eagles win. I think I would pick the Eagles to win, but maybe by like 3, honestly. Rather than, 6 seems like a lot.
As somebody who has 3 Eagles offensive players in his starting lineup in fantasy, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Miles Sanders, I'm taking the Cowboys to cover this spread, at least, because the Eagles have shown over the past few weeks a complete inability to put games away. They get out to hot starts, and then they slow down, and they do jack for the second half. Absolutely nothing for the second half. Jalen Hurts gets completely stymied, and the rest of the offense just kind of disappears. They had a real, Miles Sanders had to carry the load 2 weeks ago, and then he did nothing this past week. And Jalen Hurts ran for 2 rushing touchdowns on the first 2 drives this past week, and then did nothing the rest of the game. A.J. Brown, I think, had all 3 of his catches on the first drive this past week, did nothing the rest of the game. So to win a game by more than 6 points, you have to be able to put a team away. And the Eagles, for as good as they have generally looked at the beginning of the season, have shown an inability recently to put teams away. So I'm not taking them to win by more than 6 points. Hell no.
They barely beat the Cardinals.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the Cardinals game was alarming because the Cardinals are not a good football team at all. And yeah, jumping out to 14-0 leads is cool and all, but the fact that the Cardinals covered the spread, it wasn't even like they snuck in the back door. They were in position to win the game. Mm-hmm. Like they were driving for a potential go-ahead touchdown until Kylered, and then they missed the field goal and didn't even force overtime. But you can't look at that game and say, "Wow, the Eagles are just firing on all cylinders," and then they're going to go up against a pretty hot Cowboys team whose defense is balling. I mean, 6 points is a lot. Like the Eagles I could see them only scoring 20 points in this game. So that means that if the Cowboys score even 17, they cover the line. I mean, there's no realistic way I could see the Eagles like dusting the Cowboys. And you need those options available in order to take a big line. Like you need to be like, okay, well, there's a chance they might blow them out. They're not blowing this team out. There's no way. Which means there's always going to be an opportunity for the Cowboys to sneak an extra score in there and to win the game. I'd probably take the Eagles straight up, but 6 is too much. I'm taking the Cowboys and the points.
Alrighty, the last game of the week, Monday Night Football from Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Chargers are favored by 5 points, and they are hosting the Denver Broncos. A pair of teams that are underperforming, honestly. The Broncos underperforming much more than the Chargers are, obviously. I think the Broncos are terrible. Just saying, right? Like, Mr. Unlimited hasn't been any good at all. They can't score any touchdowns. They're terrible in the red zone.
Javonte Williams is hurt.
Javonte Williams, their one good player on offense, is out for the season. So they're going to replace him with Melvin Gordon, who has butterfingers and can't hold on to the football. And someone named Mike Boone.
Mike Boone's pretty good.
I am not familiar with his oeuvre. But they're on the road only nominally, right? Like the Chargers don't draw, and the Broncos fans, there's a lot of Broncos fans all over the place too. With that said, give me the Chargers and laying the points, just because the Chargers have offense and the Broncos don't. Like, you have to score in the modern NFL. And after the complete stinker they put out in front of the entire world last Thursday, their offense just doesn't work. I hope they kept the receipt. They need to return it. It's bad.
Yeah, the Chargers have been pretty good to us picking them the last couple of weeks. They've done a decent job covering lines, and they're a much better team than the Broncos. The Broncos' defense is good, but not special. Whereas the Chargers' offense is pretty good, and the Chargers' defense is, I think, very good actually. And the Broncos can't move the ball. They suck. They couldn't even cover a 3-point line against the damn Colts. They couldn't even beat the Colts.
At home.
Yeah, Chargers. Give me the Chargers. I don't want to hear anything about, the Broncos fans are going to turn up. So what? They're going to turn up and they're going to boo Russell Wilson like they have every week at home.
Right.
What difference does that make?
The greatest cuts ever in a football game to the crowd last Thursday.
I would be booing him too, right? They paid him all this money, and he's been awful.
I would have some concerns about taking the Chargers because of their offense can be a little bit streaky at times, and I do have some concerns about Brandon Staley. But as Eric mentioned, the Chargers' defense is really good, and that is really what gives me enough confidence to pick the Chargers to win by more than 5. So I am also going to lay those points and take Los Angeles.
Also, Brandon Staley's canceled out by Nate Hackett.
Yeah, I was going to
That's
say,
true.
we have concerns
But
about
canceled
Brandon
out doesn't
Staley.
necessarily mean 5 points.
We have
That's
way
where
more
I would
concerns.
say,
But the
like,
rest of the-
I would
yeah.
still take the Chargers to win, but I don't know about -5. But then when you factor in the defense, I'm
the
like, okay,
teams
yeah.
are different. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, I think Hackett. I mean, he's getting better, right? But he hasn't been very good.
Has he?
I don't know. I'm just saying stuff. I'm tired. That's the end of our sheet. Did anything happen?
Padres took the lead. They're up 4-3 over the the Dodgers in the top of the 7th inning.
And Alex Mayo chimed in to let us know that Matt Corral has a Liz Frank injury, so that is why he is not available.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alex Mayo, for adding that. Let's see. I guess that is it. I guess we are done. Thank you all so much for listening. If you've made it this far, go ahead and smash that subscribe button so all of our new content will be beamed directly to your device as soon as it's posted. You can find this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. In addition, it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. If we're not on your podcatcher of choice, please reach out to us, and we will do our best to get on there. You can reach us by email at thesportsballers@gmail.com. And you can reach us on Twitter at sportsballers18. Go ahead and follow us on there while you're at it. You can follow us individually. Corey is at Corey Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67. And I am at Evan_Ash13. You should go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page as well. Any shout-outs from you guys before we get out of here, now that we're 3 hours deep?
Shout out to the Elias Sports Bureau, not for anything in particular yet, but just hoping that maybe this will bribe them into not giving Andrew any points or taking any away from me, because I really want to win this game. On a serious note, though, shout out to my cross-country runners. This past week, we had 4 athletes break 17 minutes in the 5K. It's the most we've ever had in a single meet in DeMatha history. So Jaden Keels, Saeed Shakur, Christopher Toomer, and Graham Fenn, or as one of our teachers said it on the announcements yesterday, Graham Fenn, because
Who said Graham?
we all use Graham crackers to make our s'mores, of course.
Graham?
But yeah. But shout out to those guys. They ran really
What
well this
hat
week,
was
as
he
well,
talking about?
as well as the rest of our athletes. We had a lot of PRs. It was a really good meet for us.
Graham. Never heard of that.
Oh my goodness.
Eric, any shout-outs?
Yeah, shout out to Jeff Passan for just
Being awesome.
but specifically for his absolute evisceration of Ben Verlander on Twitter yesterday. If you know, you know. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay. I think I saw it, but then a bunch of stuff got deleted, and there was an apology and whatever.
I dropped the sauce on the chat. You can go
Yeah,
find it.
it's on there.
Yeah, I'll scroll back. I think that's it. So I don't have any shout-outs. I'm sure I'll think of somebody as soon as we sign off. But, yeah, let's go ahead and get out of here. So, for Corey and Eric, I'm Evan. This has been the Sports Ballers Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.